Robin, are we good to go?
I have not heard back from Big, so let me just check.
Okay. School Committee, March 3rd, 2022. We're sorry, we're a few minutes late. We were in executive session prior to this meeting, so we ran over by a few minutes. So thank you for your patience. We will begin with our consent agenda. Do I have a motion on that? Thank you, Stephen. Do we have a second? Thank you, David. I just would like to point out on the gifts that we have $750 for the BEEP program from the Brookline Community Foundation in honor of the Lauren Dunn Astley Fund. We have an anonymous gift for $2,000 for the ACE program. And we have another Brookline Community Foundation David Zadok Whipple Fund of $24,150 for the Whipple Writing Fellowship. So I just want to do a shout out. Thank you for those gifts. We'll take a vote. Helen? Is Helen here? Did we lose Helen?
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I forgot to put on my video and my voice. I'm here, yes.
Okay, thank you. Susan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. And just for the record, Mariah and Val are absent today. So just for that. We also have a vote to authorize the BHS Innovation Fund to allow them to serve beer and wine at their fundraiser event. It's at the Brookline High School at the new science wing. We have paperwork on that. Students will be present, and but they will be chaperoned by adults, and they would like permission to serve beer and wine. So I'll move the motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. Thank you, Helen. That event is April 28th for those who would like to join, and it's in the evening. Is there any discussion before we vote?
Just to say it's a fantastic event. Ellen, thank you for being here. Thank you for spearheading it. It's just a wonderful event for the community. So hopefully people can come, and I'm glad to be doing it again, especially in the new building.
Especially in person in the new building. Huh? Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so let's vote. Helen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes. Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. We look forward to that.
Thank you.
Okay, Claire, it's the first of the month. We get to hear from you. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Hello there. My name is Claire Gallian, and I am the student representative on school committee. As I've mentioned in past reports, I am a member of School Within a School, also known as SWS. SWS is located on the 4th floor of the high school, and one of the foundations of the program is the community. If you come up to the 4th floor, you'll see students eating lunch together and playing games, helping one another study, or having a heart-to-heart in an empty classroom. SWS has been a space for many students to find themselves and their community for decades. This year, the only elevator that brings students to the 4th floor was replaced. Despite the elevator being new, it has been repeatedly breaking for the past 6 months. Students who are unable to climb the 4 flights of stairs have been essentially cut off from the 4th floor and the community it brings. Students come to school unprepared, never knowing in advance if the elevator will work for them, and there's no communication or signage for when the elevator isn't functioning. I will now read a statement from a student affected by the elevator issues this year. My name is Mir Stojanov. I'm a junior and I am disabled. I've been using a cane to get around since about mid-January. During this month and a half in which I have needed to use the elevator, it has been out of order for about half of it. I have needed to use my arms to pull myself up the stairs to the 4th floor, both causing me pain, inconvenience, making me late to my classes, as well as inconveniencing other students around me. I've had to take detours to different elevators when trying to go to different classes, and I'm usually at least a few minutes late to my classes. I find myself walking to a completely different side of the building just to use an elevator and get back to where I was, but 1 floor up. Moreover, there is no way for me to check if the elevator is working before school. So every day is just elevator roulette to see if I'll be in pain or whether I might be able to just get to my classes normally as a disabled person. I can't speak on behalf of all my disabled peers, but I feel completely disregarded and let down by BHS. For Mir to have to guess if the elevator is working each day is not an experience any student should have to go through. Why is there not better transparency from the school? Why is there no regulation and open communication so that students can plan for the major derailment of being unable to access the elevator? On Wednesday, February 16th, Morgan Grace, a sophomore, got into the elevator and could not escape until an hour later. She was alone. She attempted to use the call button inside the elevator, but got disconnected multiple times, causing her to panic. She had no idea if anyone knew she was trapped inside the elevator. Stuck between the first and second floors, Morgan had very little cell service and Wi-Fi, but managed to contact her mother and her friend Malcolm. The elevator was hot inside, and she began to hyperventilate in fear as she struggled to contact anyone for help. Morgan was anxious that overheating would trigger the painful chronic illness she has that led her to be on the elevator in the first place. She was provided verbal support by her dean, Dan Bresman, wellness coach Mike Lewis, and her friends Maddie and Josue. Morgan was eventually rescued by a mechanic from the elevator company and a Brookline firefighter, and after an hour, stuck in the hot elevator. What happened to Morgan is horrifying, a nightmare come to life. But have the students heard anything from the administration? No. All we have received is radio silence. Not an email, not an apology, nothing. I understand that whether or not the elevator functions is out of the control of the administration, but problems like these are community problems, and they must be treated as such. We cannot and should not ignore students' needs for the sake of convenience. As a school and as a district, we have ignored problems like this for far too long. My last statement tonight is from Zoe Soroka. She is a sophomore in SWS and uses a wheelchair. Here's what she has. I didn't know where to start. I have been fuming about this for months, since the first day of school when a man had to follow me around with a key because no one thought maybe she should be able to use it freely. I thought that was awful. Boy, was I wrong. Over the next month, I had to beg for a key and wait for them to finally call the company to make it operational without it. For a bit after that, everything went smoothly, until around mid-November, when it began having problems again, and I had to have my friends run up the stairs, missing part of their classes, to get someone to help me. I complained profusely. My parents and I wrote emails explaining how this is breaking laws put in place from the American with Disabilities Act. The administration then gave excuse after excuse to how it was the elevator company's fault and not theirs, which may be true. But that was all they were doing, while teachers heaved my $3,000 wheelchair up the stairs, me falling behind, being gawked at and being made late for class, missing out and disrupting others' education. Thinking not only could those selfless teachers hurt themselves, but they could damage my wheelchair that is crucial to my freedom. Luckily, the emails worked enough to cause an increase in action for another bit. It was rickety and I was concerned, but little was done. Some days I would get there and it would not turn on, and I would have to alert and interrupt someone's education to get my own. On and off days with the elevator continued. I never quieted. As I complained, hoping the administration would take more action, I was left angry but bored, as this became my day-to-day. Then finally, after months of complaining, a girl got stuck in the elevator. Somebody had to get stuck in the elevator for this issue to gain more traction, to push the administration to stop putting accessibility on the back burner, but to take action. Somebody had to get stuck in the elevator after I've been warning them for months. Even now, as this has been brought to more people's attention, all I have really heard from the administration was they were suing the elevator company. I will not deny I am grateful for that, but I won't act as if that wipes VHS's slate clean. They still waited and fed us apologies, acting as if that would fix everything. Because while they waited, I have lost my independence, relying on others, leaving me isolated to certain floors and from my peers. Even now, as the school has begun suing the company, I and others are still waiting for a working elevator. Zoe has to manage her autonomy in the building on top of the other stresses of being a student. She has been advocating for herself for months with very little response. Maybe the administration has nothing to do with the elevator having been broken this year, but they are not free of responsibility. Students need communication, accountability, and accessibility at their school. I understand that the school has been silently taking action to fix the elevator, but this needs to be opened up as a community conversation. I'm not somebody who needs to use an elevator to get to the 4th floor, but I have even seen the deeply harmful effects the broken elevator has had on many students. It is frankly outrageous and disappointing from a school that claims to care so deeply about including all students. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I didn't know about this, I must say. I'm not sure the school committee did until just recently, but thank you for bringing this to our attention. I think Dr. Guillory is going to speak to it during his report. You've now brought it up to us and to him. So we look forward to hearing from him, but you're absolutely right. It needs to be addressed. Stephen.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Claire, for another really substantive report. You said early in your remarks things like this. That made me wonder, do students with disabilities feel that they, in general, face a number of obstacles other than this particular broken elevator in your experience? Are there other obstacles to access that they feel that they encounter that they have difficulty finding ways around or resolving?
I mean, I can't speak with too much authority just because that's not my personal experience, but from what I've heard from students that I've talked to who have disabilities, I think a lot of them feel really invisible at BHS and feel ignored. And I think there are other big issues that I think need to be brought up. And I won't bring them up right now just because I feel like I don't have the authority to talk about them, but I think a lot of students feel pretty ignored and pretty invisible just in general.
I'm sorry to hear that. Thanks, Claire.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. So again, thank you, Claire. We always count on you to bring us something substantive and really important, and this is important, so thank you. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, or you're welcome to go do your homework if you want, whatever you wish. We're moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Guillory.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to jump right into our superintendent's report tonight. Our agenda is to share an update on recent school visits and look at those that are on the horizon, look at some community engagement events and acknowledgements, as well as a statement about the current events that's happening overseas in Ukraine. And then certainly we're here tonight to celebrate and shine the spotlight on excellence. So with that, with our recent updates, it doesn't seem as recent now, and I see Principal Monica on the line here. February 18th seems like a long time ago when I was last at Lawrence. And then I spent some time at Lincoln today. And in each of these visits, I spent time, as always, with the leaders, but specifically looking at talking about their goals, talking about the work that's happening within the buildings, and certainly getting an appreciation by sharing some of the new news events there. And Monica had the opportunity, or shared with me, a display that was there in the lobby, acknowledging the Japanese culture that's prevalent in her building. And so I had an opportunity to see that, and spending some time today at Lincoln, We spent time down in the kindergarten classrooms as well as engagement in the electives. So I got to follow the kindergarten classes around. On the horizon, I have Pierce, Driscoll, Baker, BHS, Ridley, and Heath. And in these sessions, again, I'm at the mid-year point, so I'm talking with leaders also about mid-year evaluation, their specific evaluation, my evaluation of them, and then also checking in on their observations of instruction within their buildings. March is Women's History Month, and so we want to take a moment to acknowledge that and state that publicly. I'll read the slide here for those that may be listening later. As expressed by the Center for Civic Education, Women's History Month is a time dedicated to celebrating the accomplishments of women, as well as discussing the numerous obstacles that still remain to full equality. We encourage you to use this time in March to celebrate the stories of women within and outside our curriculum to help impart our students the unequivocal fact that women's history is history. Some community engagement events. Again, February 18th seems like a long time ago. I was invited to the BHS Lunar New Year celebration, and I'll tell you what a fabulous event it was. I was mesmerized and thrilled the entire time in participating, listening to that program. And looking at on March 2nd, we had an opportunity, and I'm sure Helen's going to talk about this later, so I won't steal that thunder, but I was invited to make some remarks to the MSBA Board of Directors about the Pierce Project. And again, speaking of Pierce, we are currently in the throes of the first round of interviews for the Pierce Principal, the new Pierce Principal, and so that's currently happening right now. Also on March 2nd, I had the monthly meeting with parent leaders, very good meeting. They're talking about certainly hot topics or interesting topics within the community, which includes masking and as well as our budget situation. This is an update about the Menstrual products dispensary update. Some time ago, certainly dating back to 2019, a BHS student led the townwide movement to have all Brookline public school buildings make menstrual products in both male and female bathrooms a reality. And this is an update as to where we currently stand as a system with the number of dispensers that have been ordered or requested, those that have been delivered, the work order submission piece, and then as well looking at the installation, so where we are in the actual installation product. And we again want to thank Sarah for her work in doing this a few years ago, and then also thank the Baker students for revitalizing this movement as well. And we certainly, again, want to acknowledge the events that are happening in Ukraine. We sent out a letter, I think last Friday update, just acknowledging the difficult times. Certainly there are families within our community that are impacted, and we want to acknowledge that we see, express that we see and support you. And we're here now and during these dark times, and we'll be here with you in the future as the events change. And we've had a few families reach out for families that are looking to relocate to the United States, and specifically here in Brookline. So we're also engaging in the process with those families. The BHS Well and Elevator, you certainly heard the student report about this, and I believe we have Charlie Simmons on the line. So Charlie, I'll invite you to share, to pop on, and if you would like to talk us through this particular slide.
Sure. The elevators.
Tell us who you are, Charlie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Charlie Simmons, Director of Buildings down in Brookline. The high school renovation project included a number of, we'll call them side projects. One of them was deferred maintenance, were the renovations and modernizations of the existing elevators at the high school. The first elevator that was renovated was the one by the atrium about 18 months ago. The other elevators were modernized over the last summer, some of them taking almost 9 months. And they were handed back to the town, the schools, just before school started. The elevator renovations included all new controls and safeties. It did not include any pistons at that time. The elevators, all of them, have been having problems since school started. I don't know if everybody knows that, but the elevator by room 125 has been the worst elevator, and it started almost on the first day of school. I have been working with SCANSA on this since school started, and I have had numerous meetings with Delta Beckwith, the contractor handling this. The elevator by room 125 is the only elevator that goes up to the 4th floor, school within a school. SCANSA has stepped up to the plate. Their council has sent letters to Delta Beckwith informing them of their contract responsibilities. The response has been good by Delta Beckwith. However, the elevator, especially the one in the back, keeps failing. And I've been told different reasons why it fails. They apparently correct it. And then it fails again sometime later. I've asked for reports from Delta Beckwith and by the architect's consultant as to what's going on and why. And I've been getting them, but I don't actually believe them. So I worked with SCANSA, and we've hired an outside consultant that's been on board and has been reviewing all the elevators, including 22 Tappan Street. I'm expecting a report tomorrow, actually, from what he found. The elevator by 125 did, in fact, trap a young girl. And yes, if it wasn't more than an hour, it feels like an eternity if you're ever stuck in an elevator. And I apologize for that. Delta Beck was contacted immediately, and they did someone over. And it was agreed that they would spend the next 2 days working on that elevator to tell me exactly what went wrong and why, and to fill out a report. The report they sent on Tuesday of the next week said that the elevator had failed. There are 2 jacks, 2 pistons underneath it, and one of the pistons cracked. The elevator is in a situation where you cannot use it, it won't be safe. So the first steps were to figure out why this happened and to see if there's any kind of a schedule, short-term, long-term, that we can get this working. They will be back tomorrow with our consultant to essentially tear apart the cylinder to see if we can find out what's wrong inside. The long-term plan, though, appears to be that it needs a brand new jack. We're expecting a quote yesterday. I was expecting a quote before tonight. I still haven't seen it, but it appears that the time frame is going to be somewhere around 14 weeks and more likely 16 weeks before this gets resolved with new equipment. That's not because the elevator company won't prioritize it. It's just the amount of time that it takes to build the jacks. They're actually built from scratch now. So I'm trying to get a confirmation of that, and I will be sharing that with everybody as soon as we get the quote. Delta's made very aware that this is a very high priority and they are responsible for getting this fixed as soon as possible. And I have been working with Hal Mason over at the high school. I met with him today to come up with some options, short-term, long-term, that we can do to assess the situation. My goal is to get that elevator working as soon as possible and to make sure all the other elevators are working 100%. And I've never had a situation like this in 30 years. So somewhere between the contract, the elevator contractor, and a consultant someone's got to be responsible as to why this is happening and who's going to get it fixed. So I will stay on top of it until this gets completed.
Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.
Helen, you have a question?
Yes, so Charlie and Linus, I understand the problem, you know, and supply chains right now are just awful, but I'm wondering what solutions we are going to have for the student or students who need to get up to the 4th floor from the 3rd floor. We can get to the 3rd floor, but how do we get that student up to the 4th floor?
Well, we've discussed putting in a lift that only goes from the 3rd floor to the 4th floor in the staircase.
Mm-hmm.
The same problem comes up. I'm not worried about the cost because we're not going to pay for it, but the lead time would be about the same amount of time as getting these jacks. I've gotten this from multiple sources, not just Delta Beckwith. So we discussed some other alternatives. I'm going to be looking at that tomorrow to have that staircase somehow modified. Short term tomorrow, I'm going to be working on some doors to help the child out and put in some automatic openers. That doesn't fix the problem. She still would be using the stairs to get up to the 4th floor, but short term it might help. And this might include up to and including moving school within a school to a lower level.
And having one of those chairs that can go upstairs, does that help at all?
It does. I mentioned this to Hal Mason and to Dan today. They're looking into it. And yes, it's if it's a working solution, yes, it could be done, but I need to see the child on the wheelchair to see if it's working properly.
Mm-hmm. So you'll be looking into that together with Hal and
tomorrow. I'm actually seeing him tomorrow again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Claire, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, 2 things. First, I just wanted to make sure when we're talking about this, it's not just one student who is dealing with this right now. It's a number of students who really need to use the elevator. So I think when we talk about this, we don't want to single out any one student because that's not really fair to her or anybody who's been dealing with the elevator. And second, I just wanted to ask you, in your conversations with your, I guess, group of people who's been dealing with this, how have you been getting the student voice involved? Like, have you been reaching out to students who have been affected by this? How have you been having them be part of the conversation? And if you haven't been, like, why not?
Well, I deal with the school administration. I don't get it directly from the students. So that would have been the headmaster and the assistant headmaster. And I can assure you, they have been in contact with me every time it's happened on my cell phone. They are very, very concerned about this since September. They were very eager to get this resolved and want to know why it keeps happening. I'm keeping them involved, but day to day, sometimes the elevator worked for almost 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and then it just failed for some reason. So we had an agreement with Delta Beckwith. They own monthly maintenance. That was changed to every 2 weeks in an attempt to see if they could look and see if there are any more problems. It did help a little bit, but it still failed. So
I just mean more like, how are you taking student perspectives into account when you're like dealing with this? Like, do you have any representatives in this group that like are students or family members of students?
No, this would be the contractors, the architects, and the engineers.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie. Oh, Stephen.
Yeah, I just want to, since we're in the middle of your report, Dr. Guillory, it seems to me that the frustration Claire pointed out was twofold. One was mechanical, but the other one had to do with communications. So I think if not in this report, it would be helpful to us to know in general how the administration thinks about communicating with students when there are breakdowns like these, especially breakdowns relating to access. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I believe we're ready for our spotlight on excellence. I'm very pleased to welcome the Lawrence Climate Action Team to the meeting this evening as part of our Spotlight on Excellence. Led by Lawrence Grade 4 teacher Justin Brown, the Lawrence Climate Action Team was originally formed in 2019. The pandemic interrupted the team's work, but they are now moving full steam ahead with about 20 Lawrence students from grades 6 through 8. We're very excited to have several students joining us this evening. Principal Crowley will speak a bit more about the team's activities, which are focused on education efforts with fellow students and staff and the identification and implementation of sustainable choices at school. At this point, I will turn the microphone over to Principal Crowley.
Thanks, Dr. Guillory. Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to be here, and I'm so thrilled to see all the Lawrence School members on this call. It's great. I'm really excited that the Lawrence Climate Action Team could be here tonight and share with you the amazing work that they are doing. And what's really, really exciting for me is that the formation of this group really came from the modeling of Justin Brown, grade 4 teacher, talking to students about their role in being an activist, their role in sharing their voice. And it's really exciting because it really pertains to our school vision, where we have many goals for our students, but one being that students will gain an understanding of their individual and collective responsibility to be a contributing member to the Lawrence, Brookline, and larger global communities. And this is a great example of an action step or a group that is formed at our school in service to that vision. Like Dr. Guillory said, they started in 2019. And then of course, with the pandemic, we had to put it on pause. And the kids this year, when we were back, they spoke with Mr. Brown, and he was eager to get started again because he himself models many actions of being an activist in his own personal life that he shares with students and with staff. So he's the perfect facilitator for this group. So without any further ado, I will introduce Justin Brown and 7 amazing Loring students. You know that all of our kids are incredible, but tonight you get to see 7 superstars. So off you go, kids, and Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Crowley, and thanks everyone. Greetings. Thanks for inviting us to talk about the Lawrence Climate Action Team this evening. My name is Justin Brown. I use he, him, his pronouns. I teach 4th grade at the Lawrence School, and I'm also the faculty advisor for this team. We're going to briefly tell you about our group, including what it is, why it's important to students, what we're up to, and importantly, what educators and other school community members are doing to confront the climate crisis. So I'm going to pass it off to Mira.
Hi, my name is Mira. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a 7th grader in the Lawrence Climate Action Team, or LCAT for short. LCAT is an after-school group open to anyone in grades 6 through 8. And we talk about how to spread awareness of the climate crisis and also effective ways to help the environment as a group. And as a student climate group, we're becoming a part of the youth climate movement, which is really exciting.
Hi, my name is Elise and I'm a 7th grader in LCAT. One of the reasons we are joining the Climate Action Team is because we are very passionate about the climate crisis and we want to further educate ourselves and others. Here are some of the different things we've been doing. Some of us have been participating in a week of lobbying organized by the state of Massachusetts. We are also organizing a bake sale at our school to raise money for Speak to the Trees, which is an organization to plant trees in towns who aren't as educated on climate change. We will also have a petition at the bake sale to push for a climate active town manager.
My name is Jessica and I use they, them pronouns. I'm a 6th grader in LCAT. Another thing that you've mentioned this already, is we are talking to our elected officials about how climate change and how important it is. A couple of years ago, LCAT was part of a successful effort to have the Brookline Select Board pass a resolution supporting the Green New Deal. 3 of our members delivered testimony. More recently, we have been lobbying members of Massachusetts legislature to make sure certain bills get passed. I participated in a week of lobbying organized by the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition, or MIC for short. I participated in 2 meetings, one with Rep. Tommy Vitolo's office and one with Senator Green's office. One of the bills I spoke in favor of was the Interdisciplinary Climate Education Bill. It is a bill about making sure that all public students K-12 are educated about climate change, the climate crisis, and climate justice. It is currently still in committee, so we don't know yet if it will become a law.
Hi, my name is Paloma. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a 7th grader in LCAT. Something else we're doing is fundraising for climate justice organizations. In 2 weeks, we will have a bake sale at Lawrence. Its goal is to raise money for Speak for the Trees, an organization that fights for climate justice by increasing the size and health of urban forests, especially in under-canopied communities. Under-canopied communities are areas that lack trees. This can be bad for the environment because trees remove carbon dioxide from the air, and if there aren't enough trees, areas can become drier.
Hi, I'm Riley, and I'm a 7th grader in LCAT, and my pronouns are she, her. In addition to everything else we're doing, we're going to help create a section in our library that's dedicated to books about the climate crisis and climate change, and we hope that teachers and students will be able to use the books and resources that we're going to collect there to learn more about climate change and what they can do to help confront the crisis. And we will do this with the help of our amazing librarian, Miss Moriarty.
Hi, my name is Lee, and I'm a 7th grader in LCAT. We also like to go outside and do physical activities to help the environment. One upcoming event that we have planned on doing is walking over to the Muddy River, which is located on the Brookline-Boston line, is part of the Boston Emerald Necklace. There we will be picking up any litter scattered along the side of the river and the paths that run along the river.
Hi, my name is Sophia. Finally, we were learning from other student activists in Brookline. We had a Zoom meeting with 7th graders at Baker about what they're doing to make sure that all students have free access to menstrual products. They told us about the success and challenges they had and what advice they would give to students who are trying to change things. They have inspired us to take action like they did, but for climate change.
Thanks, everybody. So as a faculty advisor to LCAT, I'm really impressed with the courage and curiosity that these students are bringing to this group. We all know that the climate crisis is not something happening in the distant future, but is happening now and disrupting the lives of millions of people. We also know climate change affects different groups of people disproportionately, including young people compared to older generations. So addressing the climate crisis is a matter of justice, and making the unprecedented changes at all levels of society needed to avert the worst of climate change will require unprecedented efforts by all of us. School communities, including administrators, educators, students, families, and school committee members are a great place to start. Many teachers are turning to their unions to help push for climate justice. In the Massachusetts Teachers Association, members are organizing around 4 areas, using our position in the labor movement in coalitions to advocate for climate justice, bringing issues of climate justice to the bargaining table, teaching climate change and climate justice to all students, and lastly, being the best allies to the youth climate movement.
Thank you so much for inviting us to speak about Lawrence Climate Action Team and the ways that we're helping to confront the climate crisis.
Excellent job, everybody. Everybody from Lawrence, all together. Here we go. Lawrence Loyalty. Well done, everybody. Well done. Here you go. Thanks, Mr. Brown. Thanks, kids.
Thank you so much. I'll mention one other area to become involved with is town meeting. There are many warrant articles that are related to climate justice and climate action. So if you have a chance, you might look at a few of those for the upcoming town meeting, and it might be a place to also do some advocacy. So thank you for the work that you're doing, that is for sure. Jennifer.
Thank you to Mr. Brown and to the students of the Lawrence Climate Action Team. This is really exciting. This is a lot of This is an issue that we've been talking and tackling at the school committee level as well. So it's really relevant. I'm really excited to hear about all of the action you're taking on so many different levels. It's really important to our school communities, to our town, and to the world. So this is really exciting. And I want to encourage you to continue your advocacy and the work that you're doing. I'm thinking specifically, we've been talking a lot about sustainability. I'm working on a policy for sustainability for the schools. So it's just really relevant. And I wish you all the best of luck at your bake sale in the next 2 weeks. And thank you for also cleaning up the Muddy River. It's so relevant, and your advocacy at the state level as well. Congratulations.
Dr. Guillory, do you have a certificate for them?
I do. And so I'm pleased to present the Public Schools of Brookline Spotlight on Excellence, awarded to the Lawrence Climate Action Team, AKA LCAT, in recognition of your commitment to the issue of climate change and your activism in the Lawrence school community to foster sustainable solutions and lasting change. With that, congratulations to you all.
Congratulations to all of the Lawrence staff, administration, and students. Thank you so very much for the work you're doing. Thank you. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, but you're also welcome to leave if you want to enjoy the rest of your evening. Sometimes we're not like a lot of fun here. Although the next topic might be fun, and that is about masks. So, you know, you can always watch us on Big as well. Okay, Dr. Guillory, are we ready to move on?
We are.
Okay. Our next discussion is about mask requirements in the public schools.
Just have two slides that I want to just set the stage or give context. So currently, masks continue to be required in all Brookline town buildings. As of this time, the Advisory Council on Public Health will review COVID data from the past 2 weeks, the weeks prior to March 14th. To determine whether or not it's prudent to lift the mask mandate. So basically right now we're still under the mask mandate requirement from the town. And then also a reminder that the town rescinded the verification of vaccination statuses on the 23rd of February. And then the next slide is to give some context of where we are as a community in terms of vaccination rates. This is as of February 8th, and so we will be looking to update this information in a few more days. But as you can see, BEEP of its vaccination eligible students as of February 8th, approximately 59% were fully vaccinated, with another 15% partially vaccinated. And then as you go through and look at kindergarten all the way through grade 6, we're in the mid to high 70s in terms of fully vaccinated. And then when you add the complement of partially vaccinated, once those partial vaccinations occur, our fully vaccinated status, our positions will exceed 80% in grades K through 6. And then when we look at the middle level, 6 through 8, again, fully vaccinated with the partial vaccinations there. So the bottom table here presents our fully vaccinated statuses as a district. So again, at BEEP, for those that are vaccine eligible, we're at 59.1%, fully vaccinated. Grades K through 5, 76, grades K through 8, 79, grades 6 through 8, 85, at the high school, 90.9. And then as a district, we are currently at 82.7%. And so again, we continue the model of our vaccine clinics, as well as encouraging those to certainly take precautions to protect themselves. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'll yield the mic back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. So we thought we would have the discussion tonight. Our next meeting formal meeting is not until March 24th. And it is possible that we will have news from both our panel 4 of experts and our public health department, that there could well be a new ruling on mask requirements, and masks may not be required in schools or may be optional. And so that's a fairly long time. We don't meet for another 2 weeks as a full school committee for meetings. We have a workshop, but that's something different. And so we thought perhaps we might want to entertain a motion or a thought that we would give authority to Dr. Guillory to lift the mask mandate when the town, in fact, does so as well. And that may be sooner rather than later. And so we want to be prepared for that when that comes. So that's what this conversation is about. And I'll take some hands. Andy.
Yeah, so for that purpose you just described, Suzanne, should we have a motion to rescind the school committee's mask policy from last August 17th?
Yeah, I think that we could do that. Dr. Guillory, does that sound okay to you? And David, you had a policy?
Yes, that sounds like the right approach to take.
I mean, I'm thinking we could rescind it with the effective date to be determined once we get the clearing from mental health, not mental health, but public health, sorry. Stephen.
Just to clarify, for the mask mandate to be lifted in PSB buildings, we have to do we could do one thing and then the town needs to do another thing. We need to authorize Dr. Guillory to make that decision. And then the town also has to say that schools are permitted to lift the mask mandate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's not, yeah, so I'm not sure, actually. Dr. Guillory, do you have a sense about that? Do we need to wait until the public health department lifts that?
No, not that we have to wait,
okay.
But for it to take effect, there needs to be 2 actions. 1, that we need to authorize it, and 2, that the town needs to authorize it in all town buildings. I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes, we believe that's
true. That is correct.
Okay, so the most we could do right now is authorize Dr. Guillory to go ahead to make that decision.
If that's the will of the committee, that's what we would like to do.
Okay, thank you.
So do I have a motion to that effect? Jennifer?
I make a motion to that effect.
To that effect.
Yes.
Do I have a second? Yeah, Andy?
Yeah, I'll second it. Do we need to make explicit that in doing this, we're rescinding the existing policy?
I think we do, David, don't we? Or no?
We do, yes.
So if we could add that to the motion, I would second it in that form.
Okay.
All right, so my motion, I guess, would be that I would like to authorize Dr. Guillory to go to a mask optional policy once the public health department has lifted the mask mandate in the town, and that we would therefore rescind our mask mandate.
Policy, yep. Does that sound right? Andy, do you second that?
Yes.
You want to speak something? I'm amenable. You want a friendly amendment there?
I'm just wondering about the remaining ambiguity there in authorizing Dr. Guillory to go to mask optional. What if Dr. Guillory doesn't want to do it? I'm not going to put Dr. Guillory on the spot right now, but are we merely voting to enable him to exercise discretion, or would the school committee like to go further and say that we would like the mask mandate to end as soon as ACPH allows it to end?
Thoughts from people?
Well, if we remove the policy that we currently have, then it would be at the discretion of the superintendent. I think that's fairly clear. So by rescinding the policy, it's then up to Superintendent Guillory to determine to when and how we would adjust current masking requirements. That's at least how I see it.
Yeah, Helen, did you want to say something?
I'm just trying to get clear in my mind. When we went into this, I mean, we've usually followed what panel 4 recommends, along with the health department. I assume they'll be on the same page, but we don't know that, right?
That's true. Andy, have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, panel 4 meets and discusses this tomorrow. The last time they discussed this, I believe, was on February 4th. And of course, much has changed since then. But at that time, it was one of the few occasions where I've seen panel 4 be really all over the map on an important question. And so I would not want to tie this decision to, any assumption that panel 4 will speak unanimously or close to it on what's to be done next. I think, of course, we should listen carefully to what they say and actually listen to the meeting, perhaps, and not just to like a written output of the meeting. Right. But I don't think we should make the decision explicitly depend on anything there.
All right. I mean, things are getting better. We know that. The question is when we do it, not if we're going to do it, but when is the appropriate time.
Yeah, Stephen?
I think maybe the motion, whether that's the right motion, would be made easier if Dr. Guillory, you wouldn't mind sharing some of your thoughts on what criteria you might use to go to a mask optional policy.
Well, I think we're saying that once the town lifts, that would be the signal there for us. I think what both Segal and Segal is the new public health commissioner or director. She and I have had the conversation around, they want to look at data for a little bit longer. So I'll be checking in with her hopefully again tomorrow. But also the discussion is around the conditions. So should we need to return back, what metrics are we going to use, those types of things? And I know panel 4 will also be looking to have that level of discussion. But I think right now in terms of flexibility, the flexibility will be once it's no longer a mandate required by the town, and then also being respectful and mindful of the choices that families and individuals are going to make. And we want to make sure that we espouse, our values are espoused in that we're going to be respectful of the choices that individuals are making.
Jennifer?
I'm sort of assuming that there probably would be situations as well, Dr. Guillory, where masks may still be required, where there's singing, say in music class or in-house indoor field trips or large gatherings or activities within the school. So there could potentially, I would imagine, be times where kids should still carry masks and may need to use those within the school day.
That is correct. And so one clear cut example is in the nurse's office, would make sense as such. And then as you've articulated, the singing aspects. And so we're, the nuance of the specificity of it could potentially be a bear, but we're going to try to do it in such a way that it's not.
And I was just wondering, I just wanted to sort of throw, I'm sure that if someone's already thought of this, but if we could come up with some sort of maybe even social story for students who, as this comes up in the future, maybe thinking about how they feel about, and families about masks and the transition and something like that, that can be shared with educators to help facilitate these kinds of conversations.
Yes, and our parent leaders also had a fruitful discussion about this, and BEEP. Again, we just saw the statistics about those that are eligible for the vaccine, and a good number are not. And so making sure that we make provisions for those that are not as well.
Stephen?
I just want to echo what Andy just said, that although I'll just say I'm very comfortable leaving this decision to you, Dr. Guillory. I trust your judgment. I would be concerned if your decision we were to be tied to panel 4's recommendations, because I see panel 4 as making recommendations relating to the transmissibility of the virus, but not about how to weigh that against the social and emotional burden masks present to some of our student body. So it seems to me that PSB should be making its own decision at this point if we feel that the transmissibility is within an acceptable level. I just don't see panel 4 as advising on how to weigh it against social emotional burden. I'm repeating myself. Thank you.
Well, Stephen, I think that's a good point. Panel 4 has always been advisory, right? They've never set the policy. They advise us on what we should think about, actually. And it may influence our decision, but they do not make the decisions. We then take that in. So, right, Dr. Guillory, I think that would be a fair statement to say that certainly we value their opinions and their advice, but we would still make our own decisions. We have a motion on the floor. Are we comfortable with it? Are we ready to take a vote? Okay, seeing no other hands, we will vote for the current motion. Helen.
Sorry, yes.
Susan. Susan, are you there? I'll come back. Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Susan, are you there? Okay, we'll say no, she's not there, absent, and I vote yes as well. 6, that's 6 yeses. Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to hearing good news on that front for sure. We now have public comment. We have several people who have signed up. And our first one is Linda Monach and then Kathy Hitchcock.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Linda, go right ahead.
Great. So good evening. My name is Linda Monach. I am the interim co-chair of Brookline CPAC. We heard earlier lots of information about the elevator at BHS. I'm hoping that all of us recognize that this situation is unacceptable. What I want to ensure that we all understand is that it's not just a 1 or 2 student issue. This is a serious violation, serious and ongoing violation of the rights of all people with disabilities and a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. The ADA is a federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities. The ADA prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability, just as other civil rights laws prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, age, and religion. The ADA guarantees that people with disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else to enjoy the employment opportunities, purchase goods and services, and participate in state and local government programs. An important aspect of ADA is equal access. People with disabilities should not be made to ask for keys to access areas of the building that others access freely. So no, you can't lock elevators in public schools. I'm quoting now from the ADA website. Public entities have an ongoing obligation to ensure that individuals with disabilities are not excluded from programs and services because facilities are unusable or inaccessible to them. Temporary access interruptions for maintenance, repair, or operational activities are permitted. Makes sense, right? But must be remedied as soon as possible and may not extend beyond a reasonable period of time. Given that the elevator issues reportedly began over 6 months ago at BHS, I would assert that this amount of time is beyond the reasonable period of time, and that BHS needs to immediately repair the elevator and comply with ADA. The only other option is to move all classes that are only accessible by elevator to the ground floor. This is not just about a single student. People with disabilities are not required to tell us they need equal access. We are required to provide it. This isn't about communication. This is about access. It must be fixed. If the current contractors cannot fix it, we must find someone who can, or move all instruction to another location. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Linda. Welcome back as co-chair at CPAC. Kathy Hitchcock and then Garth Bruin.
Hello.
My name is Kathy Hitchcock. I'm a math teacher at BHS. I'm in my 20th year of teaching, and I'm currently at 22 Tappan, teaching ninth graders. I'm also one of the grievance chairs for the BEU. I'm here today to talk about Robin Ross. Robin is a special educator in the RISE program at Brookline High. Robin's been at BHS for 7 years and in special education for 18 years. For those of you that are familiar with the RISE program, you won't be surprised to hear that every single one of her students requires a one-on-one paraprofessional, and it is stated as such in the IEP. However, the RISE program hasn't been fully staffed with one-to-one paraprofessionals since the start of the year, and then on and off since November. We were out of compliance. Because of this, Robin gave up her contractually provided time for a midday meal and class prep. And this is the crux of what I'm here to talk about. The program wasn't fully staffed, and IEPs are legal documents for which the town of Brookline can be held accountable by the Department of Education. Robin, being the teacher that she is, worked through her lunches and prep periods so that the Brookline School District didn't totally break the law. Additionally, missed preps and lunches are contractual violations. All we're asking is that Robin be compensated with the earnings owed her due to the lost time. This failure to abide by the contract and to put educators and especially students' safety in jeopardy due to understaffing sends quite the message to our teachers and to our families. Do we really want to lose more excellent teachers? Do we want to face lawsuits since we're not in compliance with IEPs? Until now, and this has been going on since November, Robin has been denied by the BHS administration and town hall the monies owed to her. Indeed, she was told that working through her preps was quote unquote self-inflicted. Now, I ask you, should she ignore a child who is having a meltdown? Is that self-inflicted? I don't think so. You have a highly engaged, highly competent teacher who is doing her very best to meet legal requirements by giving up her preps and lunches in order to do her job and adhere to the law. And isn't her dedication not worth paying her for the time worked? She isn't asking for anything that she hasn't worked for. She put in the hours, and because of that, our students were served. But fairness has to prevail, and Robin must be paid for her work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Garth is next, and then Calvin Bogart.
Hello, I am Theo, and I go to the Lincoln School. And when I say this, I speak for me and my brother, and we do not want to wear masks in school anymore.
My name is Garth. I'm Theo's dad, and there's been a lot of discussion about keeping kids masked to protect immunocompromised people within the community. Speaking as somebody who is in that population, I actually don't need anybody to protect my health. I take care of my health and I take responsibility for my own health. Nobody else can do that for me. The kids should be free to have no barriers to their interactions, no barriers to learning, no barriers to their athletic activities, and no barriers whatsoever. They don't need to be masked in school, and they don't need to be masked anywhere else. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Garth. Calvin is next, and then Ilan Lushiniski Williams.
Calvin, I'm sorry, but I'm having a problem giving you permission to speak. So I don't know if you have like another device that you could try to log in from. Maybe that would help.
Should we go to our last speaker and then come back to Calvin?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Calvin, we'll come back to you.
Oh, I'm sorry, but having the same issue with the last speaker.
Okay. Do we have Calvin yet?
No, I don't think so. So,
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Calvin and Ilana, I'm not sure what the problem is. You certainly are welcome to send your remarks to Robin, and she will forward them to all members of the school committee, and we will read them. So thank you for trying to speak, and we're sorry we cannot connect with you, but we look forward to reading your remarks. Okay, that closes public comment for tonight. We are now going to move into the presentation. Yeah.
Before we move on, I just want to say, in my previous comment, I said that panel 4 is not considering anything other than transmissibility. I was just informed that I was wrong. They are explicitly doing that tomorrow. So I just want to say that I'm fully now looking forward to their guidance and how to balance the transmissibility evidence with social and emotional burdens.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for correcting that. We're moving on to presentation of school improvement plans. And Dr. Guillory, I think I'll hand it to you to hand it off to our school administrators.
Awesome, thank you so much. So this is part 1 of a 2-part series. We have a number of schools that are going to share with you snippets or vignettes of their school improvement plans this evening. So we have BEEP, we have Florida Ruffin Ridley, we have Lawrence School, we have Runkle School, and we have BHS. And we will take them in that order. So first up, Dr. Watts.
And can I just jump in for a minute, Dr. Guillory, just to say that they're not being presented to us for us to vote yes or no, or to ask them to change. It's really an informational presentation. And we will hear from all of our presenters, and then we will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions or make some comments. So if you would hold your questions or comments, but do write them down so you don't forget, because we have 5 people presenting. So very much sorry, Dr. Watts, we'll let you go. Sorry to jump in.
No worries. And we're also, as a team, committed to being brief so that we all have an opportunity to speak and answer your questions. Thank you to Dr. Guillory, because I think as he has assumed superintendency here, he has really helped our team refocus on revitalizing our school councils and developing school improvement plans. And for me, that was, this is actually the first school improvement plan that was truly mine and my school councils, because I inherited one from the previous principal, which was over the last 2 years. So I just this fall developed a new school improvement plan with my site council. There are slides that we all prepared. Are we showing them?
I can share them, Regina, do you want me to share them for you?
No, actually, I'm fine just speaking. If it were.
Let's share them. So
let's share them. They look great. I was looking at them. Yeah. I think the format.
Gina, do you want me to share them for you?
Yeah, no, I don't even have them queued up. I thought.
Okay, I do. I can do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen. I was able to revitalize our school council this year, and I do have 6 parents and 4 staff members on my site council. And we've met several times this year. And one of our primary tasks really has been developing this school improvement plan, which we voted in December. So the priorities which we use to develop this are listed here, but we came up with 4 major goals related to these priorities. So just briefly, that we have a welcoming, supportive, diverse, equitable, and inclusive community that's healthy and safe, that provides a high quality early education experience with focuses on literacy and numeracy. The original BEEP research, which we spoke about the last time we were here for the Spotlight on Excellence, named three components of the what symbolizes a high quality early education environment. And that is social emotional learning, executive functioning skills, and family engagement. And you will see those three threads in all of our work in our classrooms as well as in our school improvement plan. In addition, we have focused on the district's emphasis and goals around equity and access. And I had to stick at the end because the school, as the school committee knows, we have begun exploring full-day universal pre-K. So really we have 4 major goals. The first was, as we were emerging from the pandemic, to develop a pandemic resilient school. And that involved updated procedures and protocols, developing developmentally appropriate teaching practices, and implementation of the pyramid model, which we discussed at a previous school committee meeting on the Spotlight of Excellence, presented that team who's working on it. Our second goal was about equity and access, continuing to work with the school committee, the finance department, and our faculty to demonstrate cultural competency and access to an equitable, high quality, developmentally appropriate early education experiences for a range of families. We want every BEEP community member, parent, child, family member, and staff to feel welcomed, respected, treasured, and get what they need from the school environment. Our third goal, and there were some of the action steps. Our third goal, as you know, is social emotional learning. Primary focus of it this year was the implementation with fidelity of second step. That's always a tricky thing for teachers. We use second step across the district, but we use it in bits and pieces. Given the community and our children and the emergence from the pandemic, we made a commitment as a faculty to do it every day with fidelity. And we've had support from Dr. Matt Dubois, as well as our consultant from DESE to do that. We're also looking at how to enhance our family communication and engagement. That's tricky. We don't have parents coming into the building. Some of the natural flow of things that we used to do and interact with families is different. And we are thinking about, as a faculty, what kinds of special events can we start to implement again to engage families? Our fourth goal is around professional development. And that professional development has 2 primary focuses. One is on supporting social emotional learning, and the second is developing and implementing strategies and teaching methods that are culturally responsive, anti-racist, and improves students' social emotional learning. And we are very grateful to Janae Utero and Dr. Matt Dubois for working with us on that. In fact, the faculty is very much looking forward to a presentation that we are having tomorrow about speaking to children about the identity. And I always love this picture of Dr. Guillory, because to see him live and in person in one of those little chairs is really just adorable. So thank you. So that's basically a summary of the BEEP school improvement plan. Now pass it to my next colleague, and I don't know who that is. Dr. Guillory, who's next? The order?
You have Florida Ruffin-Ridley, Ms. Buller.
Thanks, Regina. Nice job out there. Hi, members of the school committee. It's good to see you. And thanks to everyone who's tuning in and listening from wherever you are. Might it be at home, driving home, in your kitchen. or wherever you might be tonight. So I wanted to go over our school improvement plan for the Florida Rough and Ridley School. I know you have the whole plan in its entirety. It's pretty robust. We have 5 goals. And so I'm really just going to touch briefly a little bit on each of them, kind of what we've learned this year and where we're headed next year. We wrote our plan last year, in the spring of last year, and wrote it with our goals in mind to develop over 3 years, with the idea that we would be looking at each goal every year, reevaluating our action steps and our benchmarks and adjusting them as accordingly, but really keeping our goals for the full 3 years so that we could all be rowing in the same direction for a consistent amount of time and hopefully making some progress. So those are our 5 goals, as you can see them there. I'll start with the first one, which is the health and safety of students, staff, and families. So this goal that we wrote was really to be really thoughtful about and intentional about how we layered in and scale back any increased measures that might have to happen throughout the school year. And so we, are listening to you all, to the Brookline Public Health Department, and all the other experts out there to make sure that anytime that we need to increase safety measures, that we're doing it thoughtfully and planfully. And then anytime we're ready to scale and roll some of those back, that we're listening to the experts around us and making those decisions and making sure that all of the decisions we're making are inclusive of all the needs of the various community members that we have in our school. One of the other key components of this goal has really been around communication of when we're making these changes or adaptations to how school looks in a pandemic. And so we've been using PTO coffee and conversations, special family forums that we use over Zoom at night, health and safety updates in both our staff newsletter and community newsletter that goes out. And then as we think about what we're going to do at the school next year, based on kind of where we are at the end of this year, we might be scaling back or revising this goal and its action steps, and maybe not having so much focus of our work be on this goal specifically. Great, thanks. Our second goal is really around SEL, social emotional learning, and kind of tied to that first goal. We want to make sure that we're taking care of all of our students and our staff's emotional well-being and mental health this year. So we are really proud of the work we've been doing in leveraging the Panorama survey and the really strong work from Matt Dubois and our clinical team here at FRR. We had some big celebrations that we just were able to uncover from the second round of the Panorama survey that we just started analyzing the data from. But at the very beginning of the school year, we identified 3 key areas that we wanted to work on for this school year, and it was around school belonging, self-efficacy, and emotional regulation. Those were areas that in the spring of last year, our students were reporting the most amount of challenge with. So we really wanted to hone in on those 3 areas, and we divided all of our faculty meeting time this year into either working on plans and interventions for social emotional learning or working on academic plans and interventions. And so each grade level team and grade band team worked with members of the clinical staff and our vice principals and administration and the specialists. And I have been working together really about how to infuse SEL practices both within explicit teaching in places like advisory and homeroom, but then also how students could use and apply some of those skills in content areas and other lessons and activities in the classroom. So it's really important to learn the skill in an explicit way, but then also have opportunities to practice those skills. And from the data that we just started to uncover and analyze, we had a staff meeting this past Tuesday and celebrated a 10-point increase in emotional regulation in our grades 3 to 5 students, which is really exciting because that was one of our targeted areas. We had a 5-point increase, positive increase in self-efficacy in that same grade level band. So that what that told us is that the work that we have been doing and the things that our classroom teachers doing and the clinical staff is doing is really making a difference. And it's great to have the data to help us be informed in those practices. We also see positive trends in supportive relationships and challenging feelings in our middle school, which also helps us know that when we made the decision to put advisory in our schedule 4 times a week this year in middle school, that was a right decision because we can build some of those supportive relationships through that advisory time. And then as we think about next year, thinking about more benchmarking and vetted curriculum for some of that explicit skill teaching, and then some ideas of ways that we can ask our K-2 students, because our grades 3 to 8 students are the ones who are self-reporting for the SEL survey. We really want to think about a way in working with Matt Dubois. Right now we have our teachers reporting for our K-2 students, and really thinking about how we can get self-assessments from our K-2 students in a developmentally appropriate way. And then just really our K-2 team is working on looking at Second Step as a curriculum for some of that explicit skill building as well. Our third goal is around equity, inclusion, and access. So we have been working really closely with the Minor Collective, Cass and Cornelius Minor, and we've been doing some really powerful work. Cornelius was just here at the beginning of February to do some work with grade level teams and then do some model lessons in classrooms. So it was really powerful professional development where it wasn't just being, somebody who's presenting ideas and talking about what could be different in classrooms, but then really modeled what that could look like. So went into classrooms and taught lessons and designed some really great opportunities for students to have more social connections, especially in our middle school in their work. And so we're really excited for that work to continue. And then I'm also really excited to partner with Janae this spring to work in our middle school too around some specific anti-racist practices that we could be engaging in, especially in our middle school. So next year we're thinking also about, I totally forgot. We've had some really strong work from our access and equity team. That's a teacher-led, teacher leadership team that we have in the building. And they have really been focusing this year on developing a scope and sequence of social justice curriculum, specifically in K-2. And so next year we're thinking about how we roll that out, which grade levels we work on that with, so that we can have explicit lessons and then can say that, eventually we hope that we can say that by when students graduate 8th grade, that we know that we have given them these explicit lessons around social justice. We're also thinking about what are some different social justice civic engagement projects at key transition grade levels. So thinking about second graders going into 3rd grade, 5th graders going into 6th grade, and our 8th graders who go off to the high school. What are some service learning projects connected to our mission and vision that we could be introducing and making a part of the fabric of our community? Our fourth goal is all about academics. And like I said, we had divided our staff meetings into thinking about social emotional learning and thinking about academics. We were able this year to really dig deep into some of our academic data and really make public, some of the historic and persistent gaps that we've had in achievement of different groups of students. So we named those. We talked about different ways that we could approach closing some of those gaps. And so every teacher team got together and looked at different groups of students that are in their spheres of influences and made some academic intervention plans and have been working on those all year long with their teams. And then our last goal is around professional opportunities, around the essential curriculum for our educators, and also teaming, having more team opportunities at the grade level teams. And where our challenge is this year is about time. We just are not finding the time where we can, especially with K-5 within our schedule, find that team time for our teachers. And so one of the things that we're thinking about in terms of action steps for next year is how do we find some scheduling solutions that offer the ability for regular K-5 team check-ins, and then really hopefully developing a survey so that we can survey our staff around what their professional development needs are, and then really thinking about scope and sequence of professional development for our paraprofessionals, because we do have about 40 plus paraprofessionals at our school. And so we really want to make sure that we're offering them really rich professional development opportunities that will help hopefully grow future educators that will then work in our school community. So it's a little bit about what we've been working on this year.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buller. Next up, we have Lawrence School, Ms. Crowley.
Hi again, everyone. Monica Crowley from the Lawrence School. Thanks for handing it over, Dr. Guillory and Jen. I'm really excited to share our school improvement plan at Lawrence School. We have created a plan that spans from September 21 to June of 23. So it's a 2-year plan. But a lot of our thinking is that some of these goals will continue into the year after that, because we know that many of these structures and programs that we are enhancing or are creating, it takes at least 3 to 5 years to become part of the school fabric, to become part of the work that we do on a daily basis. I do want to share that these goals that I'll be talking about tonight really are the result of conversations that have taken place for at least a year and a half previous to the designing of the school improvement plan among and between all of the Lawrence community members, whether it's staff and students, parents, parent groups, school council, students. These are things that we've been talking about for a while and decided that we needed to really put them down in our school improvement plan and provide consistency across grade levels from K to 8. These goals are also informed from the really great work that we did this past July at our leadership team summer retreat with Dr. Guillory and all of the members of central office, including Leslie Ryan Miller and Michelle Herman, who really had us focus on how we tell our story, how we tell the story of our school using data. So that really informed some of our work in the school improvement plan. And then the goals here represent the really important work that the Lawrence staff is committed to and engaged in on behalf of every single one of our students. So that's kind of like the setting the stage of what you're going to see at Lawrence tonight. So we have 3 goals that we have come to agreement on. And the first one talks about our capacity to increase use of data to strengthen instruction and inform decision-making for student learning and supports across grades K through 8. And then we are committed to equitable classroom practices in grades K through 5. And that goal in particular was informed by our Lawrence Climate and Culture Planning Committee, is comprised of Lawrence staff members and administration. And then our third goal relates to grading for equity in grades 6 through 8. Again, a goal that came out of the planning from the Lawrence Climate and Culture Planning Committee. As you can see, the 3 goals of the Lawrence School Improvement Plan all are in service to Brookline's district goals of every student achieving, every student invested in learning, every student prepared for change and challenge, and every student growing professionally. Thanks, Erin. So our first goal, like I said, has to do with data. And the goal is increase use of data to strengthen instruction and decision-making for student learning and supports. Well, why do we have this goal? Why is it important? It's important that we have this goal. We believe at Lawrence at this point is that data can measure students' areas of success and areas to grow. Data can inform and guide educators' decisions about instruction and evaluate instructional effectiveness. Data can promote accountability, and data can ensure that all students learn. So that's why we've selected this goal. There are 2 pages of how we're going to monitor this goal. And the first category refers to utilizing the SEL Universal Screener, which was a district initiative, and it has been very well received and has been providing us an incredible amount of data to tell us about how our students are doing. You just heard a lot about that with Jen and the focus that they're using that at the Ridley School. We're using it here quite a bit as well. And we have had 2 great deep dives into the data, both in the fall and in the winter. Our clinical team is the team that is responsible for reviewing all the data in the universal screener. And we did that right after the fall administration and then again after the winter administration. And we were able to look at the data in the fall and identify action steps as a clinical team. And by clinical team, I mean the administration, I mean all of our guidance counselors, the school psychologist, our nurses, and our new adjustment counselor all participate in what I call our administrative team that work on the universal screener. And we are really looking at 2 particular items on the universal screener. One being, does every child feel like they have a safe adult at the Lawrence School? And then do students feel that they feel safe at the school? And we're looking at that data to see if we can increase our numbers to make sure that students are feeling connected and feel like they have a safe adult. And I'm really excited to share from the fall data to our winter data. Our students in grades 3 through 5, we had identified close to 47 students who felt like they did not have an adult that they could talk to at the school after the fall administration. And that number came down to 21 after winter administration. In 6th through 8th grade, we had 22 students after the fall administration, and that came down to 12 students after the winter administration. So what do we do with that information? We looked at that, and then we identified all of those students, and we made sure that we had an adult in the building check in with every one of those students and start focusing on how they were going to build a relationship with that particular student. In another little example of how we're using the universal screener is the amount of students who feel like they have a safe adult. We increased those numbers by 6% respectively in both grades 3 and 5 and grades 6 through 8. And we are hovering around 77%. And according to Dr. Matt Dubois, 80% is a very strong indicator of students feeling connected and feeling like they have a safe adult. So that district-wide tool is proving to be incredibly beneficial for us, and I'm sure for all the schools in Brookline. Another area where we're looking at data is how are we supporting staff, and then how are we using data to make sure that we are continuing to implement the new K-5 math curriculum investigations. I know it was rolled out across the district this year. We had a number of teachers at Lawrence 2 years ago and last year pilot the program, so it's not as new to us. But one thing we are doing this year under the head of Matt Rosenthal, the K-8 math coordinator, we have a group of 9 Lawrence teachers, both general educators and special educators in grades K through 2 who are working together to really look at how they are implementing the program, how the students are receiving the program, how they are progressing in the program, and they are meeting over 10 hours, 2 hours each month to review the investigations program. And then our math specialists are spending a fair amount of PD with grades K through 2 and grades 3 through 5, both using the November Professional Development Day and many rotations of the Friday collaborative time to make sure that staff feel that they are well versed to execute the investigations math program. And we're using student data and student information to fine tune our tier 1 instruction of mathematics. And then we are using a online software program called Lexia. It is something that we piloted here last year at Lawrence. We got support from the Office of Teaching and Learning. And we piloted last year in grades K1 and 2 as a supplement to our literacy program. It does not take the place of our literacy program at all, but we wanted to make sure that we had an additional tool for students to use during the pandemic and since the pandemic started in March of 2020. There was a lot of professional development that came attached to the use of Lexia. Our literacy coach, Jill Dempsey, really spearheaded that for K2. She had many opportunities to meet with staff. She also provided opportunities to meet with K2 families so they could learn more about Lexia, why we were using Lexia, and how they could support the use of Lexia at home. And we culminated with a professional development day at the end of school. And we spoke to all 12 teachers and asked them seriously to vote if they thought that we should continue and get another license this year. And I was rather pleased to learn that every single teacher in grades K1 and 2, all 12 teachers, voted independently to continue using Lexia based on the results that they were seeing and the data that they could collect from Lexia to then inform literacy instruction in their classroom. Thanks. So we are also using, of course, MCAS data to help inform instruction, and we're doing a little bit differently this year. So we got our data, and I decided to look at, with the help of Erin Cooley, the head of data at Town Hall, and identify the 10 students in every single grades 4 through 8, of course, because MCAS is given in grade 3, who earned the lowest scores in both math, ELA, math and or ELA. And then I spoke to the teachers of all of those students, and we talked about how we were going to do a two-pronged approach to support those children, an SEL approach about how we were going to make sure that the teacher was going to focus on building a positive relationship with that child, and then what type of planning was going to go into their math and or ELA lessons, thinking about those kids who have not earned as strong a score, knowing that any strategies, any type of planning that they do in order to support kids who are struggling, it's going to benefit the whole class. So we've been working on that during the school year, and I'm excited to see the results of those scores in this coming fall. We have also increased our use of data and the type of data with a greater focus on real-time assessments and student work for our child study team. And this was spearheaded by our 2 child study team facilitators here at the school. They did a lot of summer PD to work on enhancing and increasing our capacity to support teachers who bring students to CST. And that has been going very, very well. And we've also are using a greater use of real-time data when we're talking about our students in special education to help us make better informed decisions about the types of supports that they need in order to continue to progress. Erin, do you mind if we pop over to goal number 3? I just want to go backwards, thanks. So I want to talk about goal number 3 because it started before goal number 2, even though they're connected. So goal number 3 pertains to grades 6 through 8, and we're calling it grading for equity here at the school. And again, this was informed by a number of staff who wanted to work on this, and it really was inspired by the book written by Joe Fellman. It's called Grading for Equity. And a couple of years ago, I was made aware of this book and read the book and then brought it to our climate and culture planning group and shared with them a little bit about the book, bought the book for them and asked them to read it. And after all of us read it, people felt it was really, really important and really resonated with issues that we've been grappling here at the school about grading in the middle school. Like, what is our grading program? What is our grading structure? What is it based on? Is it transparent? Are we really grading kids based on skills, or are there other factors that are making their way into kids' grades? So as a result, we decided that we were going to use this book and try to learn a little bit more and try to reflect on how we might change our grading structure here at the school. Why are we doing this? Well, the goal of creating a new grading policy is to ensure that our grading practices are accurate, bias resistant, and motivational. And it's really important that we make sure that we have, are thinking carefully that we are grading kids based on the skills that they have learned and not other factors like whether or not they completed homework. Are we grading for compliance? Or are we grading for skills that have been learned and or mastered? So that's where a lot of this work came from. It was incredibly exciting because we started reading this book over 1.5 years ago. And then we opened it up to the entire middle school. And very quickly, every single middle school staff member here at Lawrence felt like they wanted to be part of this work, both general educators, special educators, EL teachers, our specialists. We have just about every middle school teacher involved in this initiative. So we took time to get a book for everybody, thanks to the Lawrence PTO. They bought them for everyone. And I knew that if we really wanted to take this seriously, I had to give staff time to read the book. And then reflect on the chapters and, have some difficult conversations and do some personal reflection and trying to figure out like what I've been doing for the past 20 years. Is that not the right thing? And how do we move forward? So we spent close to 9 months providing time for staff to read the book and reflect. That led to everybody buying in and saying that they really wanted to look more closely at this and look at our practices. And I was able to secure money from OTL, and I had 12 of the middle school staff engage in summer PD this past summer. And that has led to many action items that I can share with you in just a little bit. We have rolled out a new grading program here at the school, and we shared it with all of our middle school families the first couple of weeks of September. And so far it's going incredibly well. It's a lot of work. I'm so impressed with our middle school staff who decided to take on this challenge and take on this initiative during a pandemic when everything else was so hard, but they've done it because they believe in it. Erin, can you go to the action steps real quickly? So you can see here that we had 14 hours of PD last summer. The goal was to create and write up a new grading structure, and looking carefully at the book and trying to figure out which components of the book we felt we could take on. And then we had to share that new grading structure with students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It wasn't such a hard lift for 6th graders because they had never had grades before. It was their first year, but it was a little different for our 7th and 8th graders. And we had to make sure that our explanation was valid and clear and understandable to them and their families. And most importantly, the staff has been working very, very hard on making sure that every unit that they teach, that they have a skills-based learning progression attached to that unit that very clearly demonstrates the 4 levels, what the skills are that are involved in the unit. And if you are at this particular place or this particular place or this level of understanding, this is what you are going to earn. And what's been incredible is hearing students say to me, they understand why they're getting the grades they're getting, or they know how to get a better grade because they can redo their work. They're not getting penalized for late work. They have the opportunity to do work over and over until the unit is closed. So it's been very successful so far. So Erin, do you mind going back to goal number 2 now? Because goal number 2, we modeled on goal number 3. So we were doing that work in grades 6 through 8, and we had some equity work going on in our K-5, but I felt we needed to kind of pull K-5 together and do something a bit more connected to their work in the classroom, like the middle school teachers were doing. So of course, once Janae was hired as the director of equity this past summer, I attached to her immediately. I knew that she would be an incredible support. And with her guidance and her collaboration and her working with our climate and culture team, we settled on saying that our mentor text for K-5 would be Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, CRT and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. And again, the Lawrence PTO went out and bought close to, 75 copies for every single one of our K-5 staff, including all of our paraprofessionals. So we are in the process of going through the book, reading various chapters, coming back with Janae, dissecting the chapters, creating action steps for each of us at the end of our conversations. We then come back, we share out how it's going. So we need to keep this going all of next year. We just had our last faculty meeting. We will have our last faculty meeting related to this work on March 15th. And I know it's going to take time because I have to give the faculty time to read the book and process the book and practice what is in the book. So I'm really excited about that work. And I think that's it for the Lawrence School. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crowley. Next up, we have Runkle School, Ms. Finnegan.
Hey, everybody. I think I'm going to keep it short. And I loved all the ideas I got from my colleagues. So thank you so much for that. Can you put mine up, Erin? Is that okay? I'll just start by saying Runkle, we did do a very, I felt like an abbreviated school improvement plan last year during the pandemic. If you go to the next slide, I just want to give credit to my school council, my school site council. This is a school site council that willingly meets every single month and did so last year during the pandemic as well. They have been an incredible support given that Runkle has gone through interim principalships and a lot of change. So we did keep it simple, and then we've added to our goals this year, and we hopefully will have a 3-year plan as well. You can go to the next slide. Our first goal was to provide professional development for Runkle educators, again, that other people have spoken about, to reinforce the essential curriculum and learning standards, social emotional competencies, and emphasizing culturally responsive instructional practices. So I think that we're doing a lot of our work is similar. You can go to the next slide, Erin. We've been working, Runkle 2 has been in the process of starting a lot of new curriculum investigations in the lower grades, Desmos in the upper grades. So this goal is addressing professional development within the building, our math specialists working with all of these teams, meeting as grade level teams, which is still very hard this year. We have not been able to find the time that we always need to meet as grade level teams or in spans like K2, 3, 5. That's something that we used to do before. So I'm going to go to the next goal. I want to try to go quickly. This goal, our second goal, was to engage Runkle educators in the work of culturally responsive and anti-racist strategies. We have, I feel like, really taking this goal on strong. You can go to the next slide. I just want to talk about what we're doing. Janae has been a huge help to Runkle. We started our equity learning teams as a staff. So every other staff meeting, we meet in small groups. We have over, I think, 12 different groups that meet and do this equity work. There's book groups, there's groups on LGBTQ, there's groups on leadership inequity. And the staff, the feedback that we've gotten from staff has been incredible. People are really using this. We have a goal at Runkle too. I really reached out to Keith last year. We don't have a lot of students of color at Runkle. We took on at least 10 more MECO students this year, which was great for Runkle. We also had 2 teachers trained in seed practice over the summer. They got a grant from the PEF, and we were able to start a Runkle-based seed class. So instead of doing a district-wide one, we have 12 teachers working in a group at Runkle that meets once a month. And we still have a Courageous Conversations group that happens at Runkle as well. And that was a teacher-led group that started years ago that have been looking at practices, looking at text, and doing the work in the classroom. Go to the next one. And then our last goal, like everybody else has spoken about, is our social emotional learning goal to respond to the social emotional needs of the students. You can go, I won't keep talking. We too have seen great growth from the survey, from the SEL survey, the Panorama survey, but I'm also really impressed most with what our teachers are doing every day in the classrooms. We brought back advisory this year to our middle school. We did not have advisory in 7th and 8th grade for the last 2 years. We were only able to do it once a week, but even in that once a week time, what we've noticed is that students are now identifying teachers who they feel that they can go to, like a safe person in the building. And many of those teachers named now are the teachers that are actually doing advisory with students, and the specialists as well. In the earlier grades, kindergarten through 5th grade, we've been doing social thinking because we have the RISE program at Runkle. So we've always been very invested in social pragmatics. So that has been going on for years. But our guidance counselors have also brought the Mind Up program to Runkle. Second step, we are still doing restorative justice circles. We just had an incredible meeting with some 8th graders this week to address some disturbing language that was coming up online. And we even brought somebody in from Suffolk to observe that circle, and it went really well. And again, we are seeing the same growth, very similar growth with our survey results from the fall to the winter. So I think that's it for us. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mrs. Finnegan. Next up, last but not least, we have Brookline High School, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Thank you, school committee, for having us here this evening. And it's always a pleasure to follow my principal colleagues. So thank you, Regina, Jen, Monica, Donna. In terms of, I'm gonna try to stick as close as I can to 6 minutes. That's my goal. I'm setting my timer. All right. We have, we have been working on a school improvement plan last year that will likely stretch into next year. You see the members. We have a blend of students who are always a joy to be with, as are parents and staff members. That dynamic has shifted a little bit within Work to Rule, so I don't have teachers or staff members participating beyond unaligned administrators. But as people know, in school committee especially, we've been working on a renovation and expansion of Brookline High School since 2016, envisioning what we want Brookline High School to be, what we want the academic experience to be, what we want the socio-emotional experience to be, what sort of support we want to be providing students. So you're going to see that reflected in these 3 goal areas. So the first goal is around, as I just mentioned, what are our expectations? What are our academic expectations for kids? I have been at Brookline High School since 2004, and I don't believe that during that time we have reviewed or revised our graduation requirements. So it's high time to think about what we're expecting from kids. So we can look at a couple. Thanks, Erin. And I meant to say thank you to Erin just in general for supporting us around our school improvement planning work with these presentations. So Erin Cooley and Strategy and Performance have been huge. This has been a really, Goal 1 graduation requirement review has been a wonderful opportunity to bring Gabe McCormick on board and get perhaps a more objective and certainly a supportive perspective from OTL. And so he's taken the lead in this area on graduation requirements. So we're researching area schools, looking at what their expectations are, what their policies are, whether they, like us, have different pathways and exceptions. We're then going to develop an ad hoc team to review the current requirements and propose some revisions. For example, we only require 3 years of math at Brookline High School, and yet state universities in Massachusetts require 4 years. And while we're explicit about that with kids and families, I think we need to look carefully at that requirement. And we're also wondering whether we should require a minimum number of credits to be attempted each year. So those are a couple of the things that we would think about for year 1, and then propose potentially some modifications of our graduation requirements next year. So let's go to Goal 2. Great. So in addition to academic expectations, we're thinking about how are we best supporting students. So student support and administrative structure. I'd also suggest that as we look at admin structure and we look at organizational structure, we're really thinking about how we're supporting the people who do the most important work at Brookline High School, our teachers, counselors, nurses, all of our wonderful Unit A, B, and C folks. And I would also say it's been a neat opportunity to have a split campus and be utilizing Old Lincoln School and separate our 9th graders in preparation for shifting into 22 Tappan Street. And having a mostly 9th grade program there. So there are a number of areas that we're exploring in terms of admin and student support structure. What are the various ways we support students academically? Learning center, tutorial, help centers, and so on. Where are we with our advisory and school-wide programming? We've made some really important improvements to advisory over the last couple of years, thanks to some genius work in the high school and thanks to the Innovation Fund support. But I think we need to continue to think about that, and that's going to be related to the delivery of equity content, which we'll get to in a bit, the 3rd goal area. But essentially, we're trying to gather as much information as we can from students and families about their how they view the support they receive. Every kid at the high school has a counselor and a dean, as you can imagine and know. We have a number of psychologists, social workers, and other student support people. So thinking about that whole world of support for kids. We currently have a number of interim positions given some late resignations and delayed hires. So I have 2 interim dean of students and then 3 interim associate deans. And so I think it's important this year to try to solidify the organizational structure. And so you see that in that second area of making decisions about those interim dean of positions, and that then has a domino effect with associate dean positions. But to me, it's really thinking about how do we both support 9th grade as kids coming from 8K to 8 across the district and elsewhere into the high school, into that 9th grade experience, opening up access to our wonderful program, and then supporting kids 10th through 12th and obviously beyond, our postgraduate students as well. That's my 6 minutes, but I'm going to do goal 3. Delivery of equity content. So I'm glad Janae Utaro is in the audience because she so wonderfully led this work at the high school in many ways in partnership with Brian Poon and many, many others And now she's doing it at a district level. And you're hearing tonight from my principal colleagues the way that she has impacted our schools, our staff, and in the end, our students and families, which is just so hugely critical. We read Just Mercy as an all-school read, and we wanted to make sure that that offered an arc of experiences for students and staff. So some kickoff experiences in the fall, use of our professional development day on November 1, focusing on racial equity, and then our intercession day in the middle of the year, and then carrying through the end of the year. So that's some of what you see in that first area. And then we're really looking carefully at the days of experiences we've offered. And this also is genius work of faculty, staff, administrators, and students to offer, you know, day of dialogue, day of silence, asking for change, days on climate crisis, days on racism and anti-racism. And I think as powerful as those are, they can feel like standalones to kids. And sometimes groups feel as though, rightly, where are we in this? Where are we being considered, or where are our stories being told? And so thinking carefully both about the ways we connect those days of experiences and making sure that we have a rotation so that all groups feel seen, known, and heard about in experiences like that. So that's the work we're doing in school council in those three goal areas. And as I said, it will likely stretch into next year as we continue to use the new building. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Madam Chair, I pass it back to you and to the committee for any questions.
Thank you so much, Superintendent, for the work you did in helping the school administrators building at the building level, for sure. And also thank you for the presentations. I mean, the actual format. It was very easy to follow each of yours because they were similar in terms of not content, but the format. And that, to me, it made it easier. So thank you. Let's open it up for a few minutes for questions, comments from the school committee members. Does anyone, Jennifer?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's so great to hear. It's been a while since we've been able to hear about the school improvement plan. So I'm so glad you were all able to come at night and talk with us. So thank you so much for the time and energy and sharing these. It's really exciting. There's a lot of great work going on in our schools. I did want to just sort of echo Principal Crowley's from Lawrence, the middle school grading. I love the idea and the theory behind it and the hard work of the educators in tackling that. Just philosophically, that sort of aspect of grading is really timely and I think really effective for students. So I just really wanted to highlight that. I really appreciate the thinking about that sort of structure for grading. And I did also wanted to highlight at BHS, I really liked to hear that one of the goals was thinking about the graduation requirements, because I think that's really timely as we're sort of thinking about, you know, where we want our students to be in the portrait of a graduate, which we haven't really talked about recently, but I know that there's lots of work being sort of done about that. And I just wanted, it just sort of sparked something I just wanted to make as a more of a comment in general about thinking about when we think, it's not exactly a graduation requirement, but when you started talking about it, I started thinking about some of our special education students, and it sparked a prior conversation. I actually think it was from public comment many, many moons ago from a parent who was talking about special education students being able to access electives because they often have limits in their schedule because of perhaps learning center or other required courses, and how that can be really tricky for them to get access to electives. And sometimes due to the nature of when LCs are scheduled, it's very hard for them to get access to their electives, and they get less of them. So I just wanted to put a shout out there for thinking creatively about how we schedule in the master schedule those electives to give kids access to things that are high priority for them, because they have half the ability, half of the opportunities for electives. And so it's just really hard for them to get to their preferred electives. Does that make sense? Head of School Myers?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Thank you for hearkening back to that conversation about access to the electives. And it's certainly something we've heard. And I just want to shout out the work of our elective coordinators, and particularly new in her role this year, and members of curriculum subcommittee. You heard from her, Donna Sartanowitz, really going on a listening tour and thinking about how do we create electives that all kids can access, especially some of our kids who might be most marginalized or have difficulty accessing them. And so she's done terrific work with that, and thinking about in general how kids can access and be supported in our elective program. So thanks, Jennifer.
I'm sorry, I could keep on going, but I'm going to yield my time on the floor. So thank you to all of the principals who were able to come tonight and share with us. I really appreciate it.
Other thoughts? Anybody else? Yes, David.
So regarding the presentation on Ridley School, I'm curious to what do you attribute the sense of inclusion that students are feeling, that an increased level of inclusivity that they noted from the SEL survey? What specifically do you think factored into that?
In the one in our middle school, the social connectedness?
Yes.
Yeah. I think there could be a lot of factors. I think that's something that we have to dig into, but I mean, it could be around the fact that we've increased the amount of advisory time. That could be one of the variables, but we'd have to look specifically about, what we're doing in our advisories. I know that there are lots of opportunities for students to have social connection in advisory. And because they have that 4 times a week as the first thing that they do when they come in the morning, that might be offering some more space for social connectedness. Did I answer your question or?
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? I know when we get away, we'll think of a ton of questions, but comments. Stephen.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I just want to echo all the praise, of course. This was terrifically informative, and I feel like I am a bit drowned in excellent information, so it's going to take me a while to process all these presentations. I just have, and I also want to comment, I couldn't help noting that most of the presentations cited Janae's work in particular as being a big help to their work in equity. And I just want to take note of that as a one-person department, Janae's managed to make meaningful connections with so many school leaders. So just want to make sure that everybody noticed that. My question is about special education or students with special needs. To what extent do SAPs identify specific goals or objectives specifically pertaining to students with special needs? Or is that part of the goals that you've listed already? Can you help me understand how you think about that in relation to the SIP process? Thank you.
I think
go ahead. No, go ahead, Monica. You're good.
Just quickly, I was going to say, I think all of our goals, my goals, Lawrence's goal, and I think the goals of the other schools are created with an intentional focus on our students who typically need additional support, whether it's our students of color, our EL students, our students in special education, our economically disadvantaged students. They're all the action steps really have a keen focus on students who need additional supports, and all of the strategies and all the action steps that we think about and we reflect on and then we engage in are focused on those children, but we know that all of those strategies help all children. So we don't have, I did have something specific about real-time data to think about students in special education. And that was one action item that we've been working on here at the school, but all of our goals have that wrapped within it. I can let other people speak to that question too.
Thanks, Monica, and thanks, Stephen, for the question. I would say It's very much a part of how we're looking at our graduation requirements. What are we requiring of all students? And then in addition to those requirements, what are and you and I have had a conversation about some of the exceptions and pathways students have. And I think that those are really important and they're worth examination too, as we look at organizational structure, student support and admin structure. We have a number of small programs, general ed programs, special ed programs of various types. We have an incredible continuum. And I think it's crucial that we're looking at the general ed programs, the special ed programs, and figuring out, are we offering kids the right opportunities, the right types of supports? And that's not a doubt in our educators at all. It's how are we supporting our educators with the right structures? So that's very much a part, a review of, very specifically a review of our programs that is both happening within this SIP and with our review of admin and student support structure, and then the work that Casey Miller is leading in terms of the more general special ed review. So those are a couple pieces from the high school, Stephen.
Susan.
Thank you. First of all, just thanks to each of you for the work you're doing every day through this pandemic and this historic crisis in public education. I don't think we can say thank you enough to our building leaders who really do have sort of the mantle on your shoulders. So I just want to sort of start by saying that. And also thank you for the school improvement plan sort of reboots. I think each of you has been doing great work in the meantime, but I think we haven't had the ability to kind of pull up and look across in the way that you're allowing us to do now. And I really appreciate, while there's some consistency in the template, there really is a really kind of it's a great example of places where, yes, we want consistency across the curriculum, and there are a lot of equitable things that we want district-wide, but each school really does have its own flavor, its own culture, its own unique areas of interest and areas of focus and areas of development. And I think as we grapple at a large level, sort of at a system level, with what is it that we want to have consistent across the buildings, and what is it that really can and should be ripe for innovation and creativity and sort of autonomy. This is just a really helpful way to be able to start to see that. And we haven't been able to see that for a long time. So just thank you for that as well. The question that I often try to ask is, what is it that the school committee can do to be helpful to you as you go through this? Because I personally believe that we are kind of in service to our leaders are in service to educators are in service to the students and families. And so, to whatever extent there are things that the school committee can do to be supportive to you, to your buildings, to your site councils, I'd be interested in hearing it either now or later. And I think that there are just places where there are things that you all see that we probably don't see. And I'm quite open to hearing those. So thank you for this as well.
I would love to give a shout out just to the school site councils and the fact that, at least at Runkle, and I think in other buildings, our teachers are showing up, and they're sitting through meetings from 4 to 6:30 that they're volunteering for, and that hasn't changed. So I do feel that it does demonstrate a commitment to teachers in a difficult time, and we know because we've been sitting on other committees. So I just would be lost without that council.
And Susan, thanks for the question. I would just say that the school committee is doing that, is providing the support we need. I know that as we consider our graduation requirements, that we will be coming to curriculum subcommittee to get feedback from you, to share what we're thinking and where we think we're headed. I think you are doing that. I think the district leaders are helping us do exactly as you described, both a sort of moving in the same direction and in some ways a common structure, common template, but allowing for the uniqueness of each school. And you all are supporting the work at a district and school level as school committee members to make sure we retain that those distinctive flavors and yet row in the same direction. So just thank you and thank all of the school committee members.
So I'd just like to add a big thank you for sticking with us tonight. I know it's hard to give up your evenings. We ask you to do that quite a bit. So I thank you so much for your time. I will say it's great to see the leadership coming forth. I know you do it every day, but we don't get to see it all the time. And so, you know, to hear your voice and your vision for your schools is, I think, really exciting. I think that's the exciting work. I know you've been doing it with the pandemic, but it'll be nice to have the pandemic someplace else other than the front burner. Maybe it'll be the back burner, but to give you an opportunity to really do the fun work, I think, which is the leadership around, you know, teaching and learning, working with families, doing SEL work, the equity work. I mean, that's really, I think, you know, the work that's rewarding and exciting. And it was really good to hear from you tonight. It was also nice to hear that when we talk about data, we may be talking about surveys, we may be talking about looking at student work, we may be talking about presentations, projects, you know, the clubs that we see after school even. I mean, that is a lot of learning that's going on, not just towards a standardized test. And so I heard a lot of that tonight, and I thank you. I reinforce that. I thank you for that. Anyone else have any words they want to say? Okay, you're welcome to stay as long as you want. We're going to do math next, but you're also welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you very much for your time and the hard work that you do every day. We appreciate it. Okay, Leslie, are you up with math? Who's doing the math?
I'm up.
Okay.
Not just me alone, though.
Of course not.
Very pleased to introduce Dr. Matthew Rosenthal, the K-8 math coordinator. And we also have Michelle Herman on the call, who is the K-8 senior director in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And so I'm not going to take a lot of time because I really want Matt to take the lead. Many of you who are on the curriculum subcommittee have seen parts of this presentation before. And so our real objective tonight is to walk through and just make sure everyone's aware of the process that took place around the mathematics curriculum review. Additionally, we want to talk about the adoption of both investigations in K-5 and Desmos that came a little bit before investigations in grades 6 to 8. And one of the things that I think you'll really enjoy about this presentation is that Matt really took the time to include student work and photos of our amazing students at work, because we really want to give those who are watching a sense of what the day-to-day experience is for our children as they engage in mathematics in the classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Leslie. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. And I will try to keep the energy and stamina up. I know there's been a lot of information tonight, so I do have a fair amount. So I'll do my best not to take too much of your time, but I do want to be thorough with this. And like Leslie said, much of this the subcommittee has heard already, but I think that I would also like to address some of the questions and comments that they had as well. So I'll try to incorporate that into the presentation. So yes, I aim to give you an update of the program based on the recommendations from program review. Much of that came before I took on this role. So I'm in my second year in this role, my 7th year in the district. So I do want to give a lot of credit to the folks on the program review committee, the former coordinator, Kathleen Hubbard, my district coaches and specialists, especially Norma Gordon for middle school and Julie Boss for elementary school. And the entire math specialist team have really laid the groundwork for this presentation that you're about to see. And really, I couldn't do this without them and all the work of all the math teachers, both middle school and across the elementary grades as well, because launching new programming during the pandemic. It's challenging enough just to begin something new. It has been nothing short of remarkable what the entire team has done. And so I'm really merely reporting this. A lot of that work they get the credit for. They have been doing it leading up to the pandemic and these last 2 years as well. So I hope to highlight work from students, teachers, and math specialists. I also want to connect what is taking place on the ground level and behind the scenes to some broader themes around equity, inclusion, social emotional learning, professional development. And there's one more bullet here. I realize I'm not controlling the slides, so I appreciate it, whoever is, thank you. And I want to share where we are now and where we're going forward from there. Okay. So some of you have seen this already, but we will start off with a little math together. One of the key pillars of investigations, our K-5 program, is the classroom routines. And this is an example of the quick images routine. So I'll just ask anybody on the panel just to share what it is that you see here in this image, which is going to be on the screen for a while. Sometimes with the kids, it'll be on and then disappear and then reappear. But anybody want to just share what it is that you see here?
2 squares.
Let's have a couple of examples. Sure, 2 squares.
A rectangle.
A rectangle.
A gray rectangle.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, one of the key principles of investigations is all students have mathematical ideas. So we are eliciting things that come to mind for students. And this is as an example in 2nd grade, where some students will see the rectangle, some students will see the squares. And if we move on to the next slide, please. This routine carries forward over a series of lessons where they'll start to see the same or different shapes and in different configurations and start to notice what is similar, what is different. And what's really interesting in 2nd grade is they're starting to examine the beginnings of fractional parts, halves, thirds, fourths. They're starting to look at rotations and they're starting to look at reflections and even making the connection to flags. And actually I captured this video, I captured this picture in a 2nd grade class during the Olympics. So it was an especially nice application. And I shared this particular routine with you because I think it's a great merging of application, procedural fluency, and conceptual understanding, which is really what we aim for our students. And as early as 2nd grade, beginning to make the connection with fractions and fractional parts and shapes is really important. You'll see that theme throughout tonight where students are making connections both visually and numerically. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what you've just seen is a small slice of the investigations program, which in K1 and 2 is called the classroom routine. And in grades 3, 4, and 5, it's called 10-minute math. Ideally, it's used outside of math time, pre-lesson warm-up, skill building, practice, review, reinforcement, and it also helps students increase their repertoire of strategies for mental computation and problem solving. There's many, many different routines. Counting around the class, we see that in kindergarten a lot. And there's a whole series that go from numeric to spatial. Next slide, please. So what has led up to this? Leading up to where we are now in implementing the new program, there's been several shifts in mathematics teaching and learning over the last several years. And I think this is an important piece of information to note. Going from stating standards to communicating expectations, going from routine tasks to reasoning tasks, from teaching about representations to teaching through representations. You'll see that in some of the photos coming up. Show and tell to share and compare. You'll see the share and compare momentarily. questions that seek expected answers to questions that illuminate and deepen student understanding. Instead of teaching so that students are replicating and mimicking the teacher, teaching so that students are selecting strategies. You'll see that coming up in a few minutes as well. Instead of mathematics as a set of rules that we just try to make from complicated to easy, we're really promoting deep, patient problem solving. And mathematics really takes time. And rather than just seeking correct answers, we're looking for students thinking. You'll see that as well. And I just want to say to that previous slide, a question came up at the subcommittee around where do we stand? Where do we stand with all these pieces? Are all of them in place? And I brought that question to our team of math specialists at our last meeting. We had a really interesting discussion about it, and feeling like, there really is a continuum, and I think everybody could probably place themselves at different places along this continuum on all of them. And we felt in our math specialist group, we wanted to unpack these even further, and even created a proposal to have some professional development with classroom teachers around these shifts and what it really means, and having people rate themselves and calibrate what they're doing in the class to promote these ideas. So it's something that in the background we are quite well aware of. Naming this is a future goal for us to really be really emphasize these very closely with classroom teachers. And where we are currently is in this third phase of the program review. Phase 1 and 2 occurred before my time in this role. And what we are now seeing, and what I'm about to share with you, is the implementation of the new math program across K-8 as part of our district's program review. This slide also came out of the program review, and I just leave this up on the screen rather than reading it. I do want to highlight a couple of pieces around wanting our students to develop their mathematical identity, like how they see themselves as students. I also want to note this in the second paragraph, the heterogeneously grouped classrooms, which you will see in the upcoming slides, of how we are meeting the needs of the diverse needs of students, and the success we're having at meeting students' needs in the structures that we have in place across K through 8. So now getting into the meat of the presentation, that was really the long introduction to this, but 5 major priorities came out of the program review: teaching and learning, curriculum and assessment, professional learning, equity and access, family and community engagement. Of course, they're all interrelated. This year, we are prioritizing, if we continue on the slides, please, number 1, teaching and learning, number 3, professional learning, and number 4, equity and access. And I'll say a lot more about these pieces and some upcoming work for us on the other areas to follow. So why those 3? In particular, those 3 strategic priorities align very, very well with the key guiding principles of investigations, which is our K through 5 program. So what we're about to see is, in number 1, teachers collaborating with the students and the curriculum, observing and listening carefully to students to try to understand students' thinking. That's priority number 1. You'll see priority number 3 around what we are doing with professional learning, with teachers engaging in ongoing learning as we implement. And number 4, I want to illustrate how we are supporting all students, both in our philosophy of all students have mathematical ideas, and in an environment very practically and tangibly around sense making, and how students are working together to bring about one another's success. So let's take each of those 3 components. I want to share with you examples of how teachers observing of students at work are really bringing about our understanding of what students are able to do. This is an example from first grade. I wasn't able to capture this in the moment, but I recreated it afterwards using our online portion of the curriculum, which is pretty good. But I like the example very much, as you'll see in the next few slides also. Students had a template, or they had to measure their shoe, their foot size, and they had to determine how many square tiles covered their foot. It really was essentially a counting exercise with this component of spatial awareness and area. And it was fascinating to see the first graders. Some of them were counting by ones, some of them were counting by fives, such as this red clump. Some of them were counting by tens, what we'd call a 10 frame here. Some of them were counting by twos. It was really interesting to see how they determine how many square tiles fit in their footprint. And the next slide, please. Thank you. You can see the student in the lower left, really, her technique was around counting by ones. And this lesson of square tiles, this I did capture, was followed by filling the same space with pennies, and then finally filling the space with lima beans, which is also very interesting. And what I love about this lesson is, you can learn a lot of what students know and are able to do by watching and observing them and asking questions. Even better, built into this program are natural extensions, which can be used for either individual students or whole class or small groups of students. So looking at comparisons, how one problem might help you solve another one, or what is similar and what is different about them. And what's even better, if you go to the next slide, please, about this lesson, what I loved so much was that there was this component of counting for first grade. There was a component of measurement and area. And there was also a component of data collection, because then the class made this graph. And so you had all the strands of math really connected into one lesson, which really made a lot of meaning for the students. Next slide takes us to fourth grade. And here's an example from earlier in the year where the students were doing a division problem. And what you see here are three different student solution strategies. And the teacher had to skillfully chose students to show how the quotient, the answer to the division problem, appeared in each of the different solutions, and how students' strategies were either similar to one another or different from one another. And the next slide, please. You see more evidence of students' different strategies. Here's a subtraction problem, also from fourth grade. And what you have on the board are many different solution strategies. Even within using a number line, there are different strategies and different techniques. And so students shared these. This is the share and compare, what is similar, what is different, and how we can use one student's answer to solidify our understanding of the concept by seeing how it's similar and how it's different to our own answer. There's another extension that is naturally built into this one, what we would say to generalize. So you could ask students, do you think this will work for all numbers? A lot of these natural extensions are naturally built into the program. And what we're seeing is that students' needs are being met because there are lots of opportunities to share, to discuss, to learn about different techniques. There are lots of scaffolds and supports built in, visuals, grids, number lines, and there are opportunities for extension. It's very, very comprehensive. And they'll take that up to 8th grade now. We are using in the middle school, grades 6 through 8, and at the high school, this book called Building Thinking Classrooms. Our district coach, Norma Gordon, introduced this to us. We've been using it at our combined meetings for middle school and high school. And the middle school teachers in particular have been really digging into the chapters of strategies to enhance learning. One of the strategies you see here is using what's called VPN. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. VNPs, vertical non-permanent surfaces, which are essentially big whiteboards that kids are standing at to do the problems together in groups. This is another opportunity for teachers to observe students at work. The students' thinking is, again, very visible. Again, we're valuing mistakes. We're seeing work that students are doing very clearly. Students are discussing with one another. And it's a great opportunity then for teachers to formatively assess their students. What do they know? What are they able to do? And it's highly engaging from the types of reasoning, the types of problems that are being asked, which you can see there in the lower left, just to the techniques of having kids talking to one another, sharing their thinking and sharing their strategies. So I tried to paint a picture across K through 8 of this idea of teachers observing students, of seeing what they know and what they're able to do, and using that information to make decisions. I won't show you the Desmos itself, but it is on the previous slide. It is linked there. I know you have a copy of these slides that will also be posted as well. So there are opportunities to look more closely at the Desmos curriculum. And I'll show some other slides later in the presentation that reflect Desmos as well. So what we see here is a very strategic role of the teacher, which are known as the mathematics teaching practices. This comes right from the NCTM. So I highlighted these 8. And I think some of them in particular are very noticeable around promoting reasoning and problem solving, connecting representations, once again, taking the numeric and merging it with the visual spatial, facilitating discourse, posing questions, and that last one in particular, eliciting and using evidence of student thinking. This is what we are aiming for and expect that is happening in the classroom as the role of the teacher. And I'm going to return to this slide in the equity section again, because I think there are lots of opportunities to promote and hold ourselves accountable for equitable instruction by adhering to a lot of these teaching practices. So I will come back to this slide. And then on the next slide, comparable to that is the role of the student, which we would call the standards for mathematical practice. So the Common Core and the state standards are divided into content standards, things that students need to know and be able to do, and practice standards. And these are the practice standards. And in particular, I highlight constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others, persevering in problem solving. And you can see those there on the screen. So how do we know that we are meeting this first priority from program review around teaching and learning? Yeah, thank you. So all classrooms K through 8 are using a common math curriculum as the foundation for instruction. So K through 5, we have investigations in all grades in all schools. In grades 6 through 8, we have illustrative math, the Desmos version of that, in grades 6 through 8 across all schools. And those effective math teaching practices we are observing across all classrooms, and those are the teaching practices, and students engaging in this practice standards. We are quite on target for our first priority. The next one around professional learning, teachers engaging in ongoing learning. So here's an example of lesson study, which has really been our primary vehicle for professional development this year. This is an example from earlier in the year in grade 1. I will say that just today, we had a lesson study at one of the schools at kindergarten. And I didn't obviously have the photos to incorporate into this presentation, but I do want to share some anecdotes from it, which it was very, very powerful. The structure is essentially a meeting of the entire grade level team prior to the math class. And today that involved 4 kindergarten teachers, 3 math specialists, 2 of the authors of the program investigations. I was there along with the district coaches. It was a large group of 12 adults in all. We had a planning meeting together where we talked about what it is that we were looking for in the upcoming lesson. We talked about the lesson structure itself. We then visited the class, and then we had a debriefing session afterwards. It's about a 3-hour experience. The class today, thank you. The class today had 19 students. 10 of them were English learners, and there are 12 adults in the room observing. And we're really there taking notes, not interacting with the students. And so it's a fascinating experience. The students were absolutely amazing. I give the teacher a lot of credit for putting herself out there and kind of opening up her practice, but we weren't there to observe the teacher. We were really looking to observe student thinking and how does the curriculum help us with planning to engage students and uncover their thinking. We also wanted to see a lesson authentically. And while it's maybe not seemingly authentic to have that many adults in the room, just by our stepping back and taking notes allowed the teacher and specialists who are normally there to carry out the lesson as they normally would. And it really has provided us with a structure and a model for PD throughout the year. This was our 7th lesson study. We have 4 more coming. And we hope to continue this model. I mean, it's an incredible version of job-embedded professional development. The authors of the program have helped us with it, but our math specialist team have also taken the lead. And they have been incredible in, the relationship they have with the teachers in supporting this work and really learning together. So it was a fascinating experience. And the students were just incredibly thoughtful, independent. Every single student was engaged in the learning, but we learned a lot about what students know and are able to do. And we're able to make decisions in our discussion of what we would do differently and how the curriculum is designed to help us learn about all the students. So let me move on. I mentioned the specialists, and they play such a vital role in the implementation of our program. And so our math specialist team across all schools are incredibly talented, passionate, and they have helped us do all of the following roles, which are going to be listed here on the right-hand side of the screen. Yeah, thank you. So our specialists will be co-planning and co-teaching lessons. They'll be modeling lessons for our teachers. They are seen working in the classroom with small groups of students. They can provide resources. They help with assessment. They help with differentiation. They facilitate professional development. And they also provide direct support to students. And again, we really are very fortunate to have this incredible team that has been instrumental in helping us move the work forward with this new program. A lot of it is built on the relationships that they have. Yeah, there were some questions at the subcommittee around teachers' perceptions of the program. And so in the interim, I talked to several teachers and got some quotes from them. These are truthful, direct quotes from teachers who are really enjoying the experience. They think that investigations encourages students to visualize many different ways for students to express their understanding. The program package itself gives examples of student work, of what students might say or what represents proficient work. There's interactive technology tools. There's opportunities to build students' fluency. What teacher talked about, the rich conversations, dialogue, all the different types of thinking about math, the curiosity. And the feedback that we've got from these lesson studies themselves has been very positive. It's a great opportunity for teachers to get together, and they often don't have a lot of time to take a 3-hour chunk of the morning to discuss pedagogy and curriculum. In fact, I wrote it down here. One of the teachers today, in fact, said, I never get to just watch the kids. And it was really eye-opening, because their instinct is to help. Their instinct is to go and answer questions. And that's natural, right? We want to help students. But our taking the time to step back and watch them, particularly with this lesson study, has been fascinating. And in many cases, the students have been incredibly capable of doing things and saying things that really illuminate their thinking. So how do we know that we're being effective with our professional development? Time will tell. It's a little bit early to know the overall impact of this professional learning. It's certainly, there's a high level of satisfaction, I would say, but I guess I would measure it to say that our teachers have access to these opportunities. There are now these have been formalized opportunities for specialists and teachers and special educators to collaborate. And what we are hoping to promote with this lesson study approach is building a culture of ongoing job embedded professional growth, coaching, collaboration, and shared practice. And the teachers have been receptive. They have collaborated. They've really enjoyed taking the time out of their day to engage in this experience. And we want to do more of it. We hope to continue this through all grades and all schools eventually. I will say, I don't want to belabor this, but I'll just kind of mention it. It is challenging to undertake this professional development. We just don't have a lot of substitutes for teachers. I'm going to be substituting in first grade tomorrow for the first grade lesson study. I'm I will admit, I'm a little terrified of that, though I do have some detailed lesson plans the teacher sent me. So I hope it goes well, and Michelle and Leslie have subbed, and our district folks have subbed. So, we're trying to do whatever it takes to make it work for teachers. There have been a lot of challenges of why it hasn't been, as robust as it could be, but, we're making do, and we are working through those challenges. I guess I will move on to the next part. And I really want to emphasize how our program has supported equitable instruction and access for all students. And if we believe in the investigations principle that all students have mathematical ideas, you will see this, and you will see how that this supports the learning for all students. And I shared at subcommittee, I like this quote from the San Francisco Unified School District, seen as pretty progressive in the field. Every student is seen as mathematically brilliant. We believe that, and we're going to act upon that as well. So let me give you some examples. This is an example from kindergarten where they are building arrangements of 6, and they have these square tiles. They will make different arrangements of them. Some of them will have them in stairs. Some of them will have, one long row, or they'll have them in different groups. Again, all students have mathematical ideas. They then write equations or number sentences to represent their group of 6. They also have to draw it on a grid. You can see the grid paper there. Some students can draw it visually just by, transferring it in their mind from the table onto the grid. Other students have to trace it. That is okay. The tools are there, and there's an access point for everybody because they all have ideas of how they want to arrange their 6 tiles. And I also mentioned at the last meeting, if you notice the third picture, the one on the right there, is actually his drawing is incorrect. It's more of a reflection of the one that's there. So I had an interesting conversation with that child, but you wouldn't know that unless you really observed the students at work, and how they see things, and how they can compose and decompose numbers, which really is one of the most fundamental concepts in kindergarten. Where this leads to is bigger numbers, eventually 10, and how they can see and visualize groups of 10, which is such a fundamental component of early childhood math. And there's, again, a natural extension built into this, because you can ask questions. Have you found all the possibilities? How do you know if you have or not? Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to speed it up here a little bit. And back to grade 8. Built into the program as well are really opportunities to for social emotional check-ins. Which problem are you most proud of and why? Describe a mistake you made. And on the next slide, what questions do you still have about this practice? Lesson feedback is highlighted there. This is constant interaction with students who are reflecting on their work and getting feedback from the teacher. And also within Desmos, natural extensions are built in a section called Are You Ready for More? It's already there, and the problems are pretty sophisticated. Another opportunity for access and equity is through math workshops and investigations. Students can practice their skills, they develop independence, and it also allows the teacher to work with individuals or small groups. Students choose the activities, they keep track of their work, they keep track of the materials. And I saw this in kindergarten today. It was, the students are very, very capable of this type of work. Let me show you the next couple of slides. Opportunities for students to work together, supporting and justifying your thinking. Are you sure? How could you convince someone else? There's extensions built in around conjectures. What happens if? What would happen if you add 2 odd numbers, for example? And here we have a picture of a student on the, 2 students here on the left using visual models. In this case, it's a series of 10 hundreds charts to represent 1,000. So there are extensions built in, there are scaffolds built in, there's opportunities for students to dialogue, and this is how we support the learning environment. Next slide, please. This is an example from 3rd grade. Very, very sophisticated. The students are using these straws of different sizes to construct triangles. Some of the triangles they're constructing are equilateral, some are right triangles, and some of the straw lengths don't make triangles at all. And for the analysis of how the students could determine which made which and which did not work, are concepts that are like revisited later in middle school or around right triangle properties and triangle inequalities. And to have the students discuss with one another why the numbers worked and why they didn't work was absolutely fascinating. So it's really opportunities for students to share their thinking. All students have ideas. Students collaborate with one another and the curriculum. And there's a quote from a student who just says he works better with classmates and they listen to one another's ideas and it helps them learn more. So this is one of the last points I want to make is around these math teaching practices. I said I would come back to this. This really fits in well with equitable teaching. As we have teachers using and connecting mathematical representations, we would say, promote the creation and discussion of unique ideas. You can position students as mathematically competent. When you facilitate discourse in class, you are creating space for students to interact with one another and you value multiple contributions. And what this has done is this has diminished hierarchies in class. There are fewer perceptions of who is a math learner and who is not. Everybody is capable, and we really strategically position students to dismantle this hierarchy in class because we listen to all students' ideas and students build off of one another. By eliciting and using evidence of student thinking and making it public, we are elevating all the students so that they have essentially a mathematical identity. They believe that they are capable of doing math. And our program supports that by the types of problems, by the tasks, by the role of the teacher, by the discourse that happens as we make student thinking very visible. So finally, how do we know that we're doing well with this priority? Consistent access to those effective teaching practices, personalized feedback and reflection. You saw that and increased student responsibility, independence, and confidence. And we are seeing that. We're seeing that as we visit classes. We're seeing it as we observe students. It's a strengths-based approach. We're seeing what students are capable of doing, not what they are incapable of doing. And so just in summary, I have one last slide. I'm probably running out of time here. Just the timeline of where we are and where we're going. So that first line, we continue to build the understanding of those teaching practices. That is ongoing work. We have implemented a new curriculum across K through 8, started last year, and it continues. The lesson study PD we started this year, and we will continue that into next year. And then the other two priorities, which are connected to this, one is around assessment, the other is around family and community engagement. Some of that work has begun this year, but the bulk of that will be next year and beyond. And I think that we have prioritized the very important recommendations from program review. And I think we're making progress. We have some work to do still. But I hope you enjoyed seeing some of those examples. And that is my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or hear any feedback.
Oh, thank you so much. There's a lot there. It reminds me of, Leslie probably remembers this. We used to do math breakfast principles in Boston. Do you remember that? And it would be around investigations. And we did the math. It was a great PD. And she gave us breakfast. So what can I say? Helen.
Yeah, food always helps.
It does.
In anything. Thank you, Matt. This was really very extensive and well done. Thank you for the presentation. The one thing I didn't see there is, how does pre-K work into this?
Yeah, you're right. I did not include that. I have not done a lot of work with pre-K, and it's always kind of question to me, is it K through 8 or pre-K through 8?
It's pre-K through 8.
To tell you the truth. So, you know, investigations begins in grade K. So I have not delved into pre-K. We've had a couple of discussions with Turk, the authors of investigations around pre-K, but that might be a future direction to explore. I can't really speak to it right now.
But I see Regina here. Maybe she has something.
Yeah, Regina, you want to say something?
Sure, yes. Actually, Leslie and Michelle have been instrumental in helping me and Margaret and Erin think about aligning our pre-K curriculum closer to the kindergarten curriculum. And we've really, we've looked at the literacy piece and began our discussions about purchasing some math materials and manipulatives that would be consistent across all of the pre-K classrooms. As well as maybe some anchor math books. And Michelle had been exploring some different curriculum ideas too, because as Matt said, investigations officially begins at K, but certainly we want to be thinking about those introductory concepts and having children have exposure to them in a really developmentally appropriate, fun way with concrete materials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember Vicki did some stuff with the numeracy too.
Yeah, there's an excellent new book out that Margaret Eberhardt just brought to our attention, published by the National Association of Young Children, about math instruction that we are considering buying for each one of our faculty members, because it has tons of specific activities that align with the investigations curriculum.
Great, thank you. Thank you both.
Oh, and one other thing, we're exploring some consultation with Chris Moynihan around helping us do that piece. Thank you to Michelle and Leslie on that.
Matt, did we have investigations before, or we've never had that in Brookline?
to my knowledge, we had, this is the 3rd edition. I believe we had the 1st and 2nd, but not right before this, like many, many years ago. And then there was a period of time when there was Think Math in between, and maybe even another program or nothing. So many, many years ago, an earlier edition, I think.
At one point we had DMP. My kids used to call it dumb math problems, but that's what we had in the elementary.
Andy, and then Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That was a wonderful presentation. There was a time when I made my living as a research mathematician, so some of this is really interesting for me to see. So I guess I have one comment and one question. So the comment is just that there are a couple of practices that you illustrated that really reminded me of things that people do as research mathematicians. One is that there are whiteboards everywhere. Like if you go into a conference center or a research institute for math, like they cover every available surface, including the insides of the elevators. So that was fun to see the picture of that classroom. And the other thing was this emphasis on explaining things to others and convincing them. Like, you know, as a researcher, basically your result is valid if you're able to explain it to one other person and convince them that it's right. So it was really fun to see that emphasis. My question, I guess, it's something you touched on, which is like how important it is to cultivate self-belief in teaching math. Because something I struggled with, you know, teaching math at the college level was just the number of people who had often at a very early age, like written themselves off as mathematicians and convinced themselves I'm just not good at math and the further effort is useless. So is there a way to kind of assess sort of attitudes toward math and not just, you know, not just the standard ways of grading people in math, but can we figure out how to check whether, you know, these new practices are actually, you know, preventing kids from dropping out in that way, convincing themselves, you know, very early on that they'll never be good at math?
Yeah, a good question. I mean, I think we could certainly survey students. A lot of it happens, you know, naturally in the classroom discussions and, you know, by the work that we see and the comments that they make. And so much of it is just around the observation component, you know, hearing the way they talk to one another, hearing the way that they express, you know, joy or curiosity. You know, I heard a 3rd grader the other day. She just said, oh, I'm just going to try something, you know, and like these little anecdotes here of kids being persistent and motivated. And I mean, I think the program is designed to support that and the teacher's role to develop that. And I guess the earlier the better too. So when we're seeing kindergartners and 1st grade students advocating for themselves and feeling really positive that their work and their answers are valued and that the teacher is interested in hearing what they have to say, whether it's, you know, on point or not, I think that's how we build it. And I guess, you know, from the ground up from there. But certainly, you know, for older kids, I think we can probably, you know, survey them in the same way that we would survey them about other ways that they see themselves and their health.
Jennifer.
I actually was going to make a comment about something else, but then this conversation got me really excited. Joe Bowler out of Stanford has a lot of really exciting work about you know, developing a mathematical growth mindset and that everyone's a mathematician. And there's some really great stuff in the U-Cubed section there that you can use to like kick off the school year to sort of start that. But I really do think Investigations has a really nice way of increasing student discourse and conceptual understanding instead of just sort of that like rote arithmetic. It's a really nice, you know, the shift into this more theoretical conceptual understanding. So I think the program has it in it, but it just listening to Joe talk about everyone being a mathematician, and she gets lots of kids involved in her videos. It's just really cool stuff. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. But what I really wanted to, when my initial comment was my excitement about, I know how difficult PD has been for us historically. And so I'm really excited about the job embedded PD. And I'd love to hear, towards maybe the end of the year, maybe how that's going and, how educators are feeling about it. I think when we spoke at the subcommittee meeting, folks were feeling like it was helpful to them and it was a good experience. So I hope that continues to be so. And I just really wanted to thank Matt again for coming. He did come to the subcommittee and present to us, and thank you for incorporating some of our questions into this. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll just jump in and say it is his son's birthday this evening. So, and he's joining us.
So sorry, Matt. Helen, now you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll be quick. I think one thing that will be interesting to note, and I'm hoping we're looking at that, as the kids, as this becomes sort of embedded, what happens at high school, and how do they see the students that are coming to them? Are they any different in terms of their mathematical abilities, curiosity, whatever? I know that you're working together with the math curriculum coordinator, which is great, but it would be interesting to know or to look at or to measure somehow what effect this learning has on high school performance, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely, yes.
And Helen, we're going to have Josh join us at another school committee meeting. We didn't have him join this evening. He had a time conflict, but also given the extensiveness of Matt's presentation, we thought that we would have a time issue. So we will have Josh join.
David, and then Susan.
I had a question similar to Helen's, but for an earlier grade span. So it's great to see kindergartners and children in grade 3 engage in such hands-on learning with math to make it fun for them and engaging. And I'm wondering what efforts are made to keep students that engaged and enjoying the math problems that they're addressing as they head into the middle school years and beyond, where perhaps math becomes a little more expansive in terms of what students are learning.
Yeah, I could have given more examples. Actually, I have quite a bit of collection of examples that span all the grades, and I think there's an equal amount of evidence for the middle school engaging and hands-on. And I didn't show. I'm remiss. I didn't show something specific from Desmos, but it's the dynamic software alone is incredibly engaging for students to be able to manipulate things on a screen that they couldn't do on paper, and then even have that discussion with students. So I'm seeing kind of comparable levels of engagement and opportunities for the hands-on learning throughout the K through 8 spectrum, and I can certainly in the future share some more examples of that. I think that the approach is very, very similar, even though the programs are different, K through 5 and 6 through 8. But the idea of eliciting students' thinking and balancing sort of the procedures with the conceptual understanding it's really there. I may not have as the slides tonight for that.
Susan?
Thank you so much, Matt. I don't want to keep you either, but I do want to say just a couple things that are so exciting about this. We've been talking about math program review since I joined the school committee in 2008. That was a long time ago. Most of our, half of our students were not born at that time. And so it's just really exciting that so much of the progress has been made, even in these really complicated conditions. And specifically, really deeply understanding that the K-5 and the 6-8 experience are very different in terms of math, and having subject dedicated teachers and what that means. Just your thoughtfulness about kind of the diverse range of learners and kind of how different learners can access the material embedded in the curriculum, as opposed to, take a, vanilla chocolate or strawberry worksheet, or kind of different ways to to segregate kids. I think this really is, I'm fascinated to see kind of how it plays out in terms of leveling sort of the playing field and having kids be able to access a whole wide variety of different kinds of problems altogether. I mean, it also, we've heard so many complaints, not as many in the last couple of years, but in general about sort of Russian math in particular, and what happens when kids come to our district having taken Russian math for many years, and you know, what do we do with them? And I think this is just such an important, you know, sort of response to that, kind of a substantive response, not kind of a swing at every pitch response, because I think that it really does demonstrate a lot of those kind of conceptual skills that we want people, and the why and the understanding of the reasoning that we want kids to get. So at any rate, I could probably go on, I won't, but there are just so many aspects that we've been talking about for such a long time. And we are lucky to have had you in different roles in the district, from the ECS role and totally transforming that program from a pullout to, you know, kind of a project-based approach, and maker-based approach, and now this. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. And you know, the only last thing I'll say, because we didn't talk about it here, but you know, we have a lot of conversations about number of minutes that we spend on math and ELA relative to other subjects. And I would be interested, we've had this conversation with Josh Paris, and I'd be interested to know if there's any way to sort of think about it here as well, but like, where are there places where we can kind of kill two birds with one stone, or three birds with one stone, and sort of embed math into social studies, embed math into some of the other program areas. So we're not kind of adding, but we're kind of, doing that more integration work. So I don't think that's a conversation for today, but all of the comments you were making about applied math and relevance to kids, and just getting them excited to engage, and kind of seeing why it's important to understand math, I just think is so important. So thank you for all of this. Just excited to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Thank you.
May I just throw out maybe light two candles with one match, so we don't have to kill birds. It's just a saying. I've switched to light two candles with one match. Anyway,
how do you light
two candles with one match? I'm just, so we don't kill birds. It's just a little thing I've promoted for years. Nobody's picked up on it. I just want to say, I just love, as Jennifer said, the idea of lesson studies. I think that it's a fabulous idea. It's powerful. At some point, you can even ask the teacher that you're visiting, the host teacher, what would they like the participants to look for, to give them feedback. We may not be ready for that yet, but there is so much power in lesson studies and visiting each other's classrooms. So thank you for doing that. I think that's fabulous, just fabulous.
Thank you.
Other thoughts, comments? Jennifer.
I want to be super quick because I want Matt to be able to go. I was thinking about what Helen said about sort of like looking for the long-term impacts of this. And I just wanted to throw out my 2 cents, which is speaking for myself. I think it'll take a number of years to see the full impact of it. Like I think we probably see the most impact when our kindergartners work their way all the way up, because the program, you know, really they develop these skills like quick images, and they really sort of develop these skills and strategies and these concepts, and they build. So I do think it'll take a while. I don't think it'll take 8 years. I'm just saying, you know, I think it takes time to sort of see the benefits once we really are using the program with fidelity.
Okay, I hope he's not in bed yet. I don't know how old is it your son?
11, and he should be, but I don't think he is.
Okay, well, okay. Tell him we appreciate that he gave up his dad on his birthday. That's for sure. We owe him. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
And thank you, Leslie and Michelle, for all that you've done with this. We're moving on to budget updates and possible vote on 2023 fees. And I have down Linus and Sam for that. Is that the case?
Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass the mic over shortly to Sam. You all recognize the work that we are doing to seek efficiencies, as well as gain greater clarity around what additional revenue sources we may be able to land, but also what can we do to also gain some benefits out of what we are currently doing. So that work is ongoing. And I am in the process of scheduling a meeting with Town Administrator Kleckner for an update or a status check on the broader scope of the LEA appropriation. So with that, Sam is going to then do some updates on some of the work that's been happening. And then I think Stephen is going to lead the discussion around the fees.
Thank you very much. Just to tie Linus's comments to some of last night's finance subcommittee, which I'll talk about. And then as Linus had indicated, Steve will talk about the fees part of it. Just to remind the committee ever so briefly, we updated where the calendar was for dates that haven't occurred yet. We have one more finance subcommittee meeting on the 16th at around the same time. Version 1.1 of our budget book should be ready to be pushed out. March 29th, we go to the select board to present our budget. And then the 31st and April 5th is meeting scheduled with advisory. And then town meeting starts on May 24th. With respect to the meeting yesterday and where we are with process, we followed up on the meeting we've talked about personnel, and working with Mariah, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, we came up with a different way to present in categories a little bit more granularly, or actually a lot bit more granularly, by curriculum area, by job class, where those roughly 1,400 FTE are distributed. The initial feedback that was received was very positive, and there were some ideas about making it even more presentable in an understandable way. And so that was taken back, and the expectation is for the 16th, when we meet again, is to have those suggestions incorporated into a revised 23, which was the year we talked about, and then going back at least to F22, the year we're in, to provide some level of context of where the changes are year over year. And that's what transpired, besides a lot of time talking about fees, which I'll turn over to Dr. Ehrenberg to illustrate further.
Thanks, Sam. I just want to say also that list of that breakdown of FTEs and expenditures by position, by department, was enormously helpful. It was just yet another level of transparency that I think everyone on the subcommittee really appreciated. Okay, I'm going to try to represent Mariah, which doesn't seem likely. So we had a spirited conversation around revolving fund fees, particularly for BEEP. The reason was there was an initial proposal of a 2% increase to which was, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, roughly commensurate with the annual increases that had been proposed previously. There were two issues there. One is that 2% increase didn't really cover operational costs for BEEP. To cover those costs, we would need a 4% increase. And then Mariah further proposed that we should increase it to 5%, so to cover families who could not afford BEEP. The conversation, I'll try to summarize the back and forth. Everyone who's there, please feel free to nuance my simplification, but I think the conversation was between, I think most of us felt aligned with the values that that proposal represented. The questions were more around whether the 5% increase would achieve what it intended to achieve. There was a lot of evidence presented at the meeting about the demands for BEEP, that there was a waiting list, although the waiting list has shrunk, and that there are a lot of families that would have needed a full subsidization of BEEP to attend it that had not received that because the slots were full. So the question was really, if we raised it that much, what is the price elasticity of a BEEP education? To what extent would it drive families away if there was an increase? To what extent are we obligated to increase our revenue to cover families in need? And I think the subcommittee was split on this, although in the end, but first there was a motion to recommend a 5% increase to the entire school committee, and that was split on the subcommittee. And then there was a recommendation of the 4% rather than the 2%, so that the operating costs were fully covered, and that was, I believe, unanimously passed. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it was unanimous.
301. I think Mariah.
301. Thank you very much. So that's where we're at. Please, anyone, please add to my summary if you feel that I've left something out. Helen.
If I could, I'm not on the committee, so I didn't vote, obviously. But I had brought up the issue of the market and the fact that there's a center opening that is pricing themselves below the market, which could be competitive with us. And I'm concerned that we could lose families, especially if we raise it too much. I think 2% is totally reasonable to raise it, possibly even 3%. But I think once you get up to 4%, that's quite a bit of a hike. And I worry about it. I worry about maintaining families, and also, is it really fair to families? In terms of the way the structure of how BEEP is funded from many different sources. So those were my thoughts at the meeting.
Andy?
Yeah, could I ask why we're estimating that the operational budget will go up by 4% next year? Is it mainly staffing costs?
That would be correct, Andy. That is accurate.
All right. So in that respect, it's very similar to the rest of our budget. Yeah.
So tonight, are we approving all fee increases or no changes? Or are you just looking at the BEEP program? What are we looking for tonight?
I believe we would like all the fees to be voted. I think if not for anything else, a lot of them aren't changing, which is good.
Right.
But for the ones that are, certainly communicating to those stakeholders with as much notice as we can.
Right. Andy?
Yeah, so if we're also voting on the other fees, can I ask, I noticed that materials fees usually rise 3% a year, and this year the proposal was for a 2% increase. Maybe this was discussed in finance. I don't know. What was the rationale there?
I think I would defer to the superintendent, not to put him on the spot, but I think Linus had some input there.
I think when we, that was a while back, so it is putting me on the spot for that one. I think we were looking at those costs, the movement over time, and we felt that, I think similarly to what Helen was saying about the BEEP fees, that was the rationale at the time for the materials fees. But I'd have to go back and look at my notes on that one specifically, Andy.
David?
I think we also wanted to be mindful that it's our educators who primarily pay for materials fees, and we wanted to be sensitive to their increases or lack thereof, depending on where they are on the steps and lane scale when determining how much we should increase material fees.
Got it. Thank you.
Can I make a comment on the BEEP fee increase as well, Suzanne?
Sure.
One comment that stood out to me, not to put my foot on the scale either way, was that I had asked whether we had had the opportunity to study the impact of fee increases on whether families would enroll their students. And then Dr. Guillory, I think, rightly pointed out that we just haven't had the personnel to do studies like that in the past. So, and Sam's point, I think, is that we're really making our best guess. We're basically hypothesizing where the market equilibrium is. And we're trying to do it in a context where we're trying to lead with our values here. So I don't think, it seems to me we're not going to have certainty on this. Mariah made the point that the actual dollar value of the increase for 1% was, Sam, remind me, I think it was $117, was that correct?
On the base, it was closer to, I think, 114.
Okay, so that's what a point represents in this conversation.
On the tuition, it does, and for overall dollars, all things being equal, it's $25,000 of revenue each point,
which represents the ability to fully fund two students at the
again, all things being equal and capacity being available. Yes.
Right. So the difference between 4% and 5% here are 2 additional fully funded students at the cost of $114 per family enrolled in BEEP. Is that right, Sam?
That is the math.
It would seem to me that this would be a perfect use for the ARPA funds, you know, for these families who aren't able to access right now. I mean, why wouldn't we try and go after that for it rather than asking other Brookline families to pay more?
I guess my only concern, Helen, as I'm interjecting, is this would be a base increase, much like we're looking to ask for ARPA funds, I believe, eventually to address some to all of the gap that we have between our ask and the, I think it would be largely a similar kind of ask. My opinion, anyway.
I think there was something in the some of the people who put in to the Brookline Community Fund applications for preschool, if I'm not mistaken.
What, at ARPA, you mean, Helen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know.
Not us, but other.
Yeah. Is there any thought that we're getting federal money at all for universal kind of pre-K or anything with pre-K?
Not until they pass the, divide up the legislation and get it through.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's going to come through as a package.
Could I ask whether Regina has anything to add at this point? I don't think you've had a chance to weigh in since the subcommittee took a vote yesterday. You're still
muted, Regina.
Thanks. My grandfather clock, I sometimes forget to mute, and I'm sure everyone in the whole town hears it. Anyway, I think I expressed my opinion yesterday pretty clearly that I am very concerned about a 4 or 5% increase, that we've had a decrease in the number of applicants. We have had an increase in the number of families a significant increase in the number of families requesting tuition assistance. And we have more competition. And as we emerge from the pandemic, I do believe the demographics of families, how many people are working, the hours they're working are different. And it is a very big challenge for families. I understand the constraints that you're discussing too, in terms of the school budget, but it's a very difficult line to thread. Also, and Sam, you may be able to, and Dr. Guillory, give us more insight. Are we able to use funds collected in a revolving fund to fund tuition seats of students who need tuition assistance? I thought there were very big restrictions on how that money could be used.
I mean, it's overall part of the budget, but that's the tuitions we charge when the budget is built. As you know, Regina, your budget is partially funded by the appropriation and partially funded by tuition dollars, and so when added together, and partially funded, as it was mentioned, by CIP and the leases for spaces. And right now, as built for next year, that budget appears to be balanced. And it is just that, a budget. We're speculating that we're going to have the amount of paid tuitions that we've expected. If we don't, then it would be a variance. But at this point, it's, talking to you and seeing again how this year is tracking, I have no reason to believe currently that we won't hit our budget. But to your point, you haven't told people what the new fees are yet, and hopefully we won't get anybody saying, well, that's too rich for me, I guess I'll go somewhere else.
So Sam, I'm confused. You said with what you put forward at 2%, it was a balanced budget?
Well, that's what was built in the budget, because we had to make assumptions. Again, this would give us some additional margin. Again, each point is $25,000, but we don't have, I wouldn't take the enrollments to the bank yet. We haven't told people what the fees are. There is potential. Again, I don't want to overcommit, but again, each point is 25,000. If things trend favorably, and we have open seats, we might be able to offer more scholarships. Just to let the committee know, I don't think this is a secret. Regina and I we made a decision, we'd look at the second, after winter break, and people who hadn't, if there were seats available and people on the waiting list for tuition scholarships, we would fill those seats rather than leave them unfilled with that capacity. And I think we were able to place a couple of students so far with a couple poised to fill more seats. It gives us that flexibility as well. But again, it's a bit early to see what our final enrollment's going to be.
If you could remind me, what have we raised in the last couple of years? What percentage have we gone up?
That I can tell you, it averages over the past 4 years, 2.75. We had 2 years of 2, a year of 3, and a year of 4 in the past 4 years.
So I know it sounds like, just $100, $117 to go up 1%, but if you look at it over the last 4 years, we're talking, I don't know what we're talking.
We went up 11% over the past 4 years.
Can I ask a question?
$1,000. Right?
Regina, when you say there's more competition, I guess it was my understanding that there really is not so much competition for the quality and reputation that BEEP has at that price point, that the competition was generally either far less expensive or far more expensive. Is that a misunderstanding on my part?
So there are, I did an extensive review of the centers as well as the traditional pre-Ks in the community last year. And Susan has been talking about where we have attempted to position ourselves. There is, there is a new center in town that is really looking actively to fill 6 classes, which is a lot of families that potentially would be, and they're, they have, their tuition is less than ours significantly. If we raise to 5%, it will be about $1,000, about $1,500 cheaper, I believe, which is, that's a big chunk of change for a young family.
Thanks.
Again, for tonight's vote, could we have 2 different votes? One just for the BEEP and then one for all the other fees? Could we do that? Just so we can make things happen. Okay. You want to make a motion, Stephen, for all?
Yeah, I'll move the approval of all the fees recommended except for the BEEP increase.
Okay. And we have all those. It goes on for many pages, but.
And I'll second that. Okay. And just ask to make sure. So we did decide not to have a fee for reduced lunch.
Lunch, that's correct. And that's noted in the revised document.
Okay, I didn't notice it. That's
at lunch and breakfast?
Correct, both.
Both.
Good.
So if you're free or reduced, it's a.
You're free. You're free or free.
You're free or free. Okay. 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 Any other discussion about that? There's a lot of them, but as Sam said, many of them are no change. So hopefully you've had a chance to look. Okay, let's take a vote. Helen?
Yes.
Susan?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, now we have to figure out BEEP and the fee.
Well, I can put a motion out there.
Sure, Helen.
That way. I move that we increase BEEP fees by 2%.
2%. Okay. Is there a second to that one? Okay, so that's
perhaps Helen first. Why don't I'd like to move that we increase it by 4%, which was the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee. And if that fails, maybe we can move to Helen's motion.
Okay.
Well, no one seconded Helen's.
Well, if anyone wants to second that.
Seconded mine, so forget. Don't go to 2.
Don't go to 2.
I can count the votes.
I would actually like 3, but no, I would. I'm serious about that. Jennifer, you like 3? Yeah. Okay. There's a couple of us that like 3. Helen could probably go to 3.
Well, is there a second for a 4%?
Okay, let's see if this, David says yes. Okay. Okay, any other conversation about that? So we're voting for 4%. Jennifer.
I'm concerned about the low numbers that we've had coming out of the pandemic and through the pandemic and with the opening of the new center. If the rent is, the tuition rather is that significant of a difference, I think that's going to continue to be an issue. They got a brand new building, new facility. I think 3%. That's my comment.
Yeah, I think I'm going to vote no on the 4%. I just somehow feel more comfortable about 3. So just to let folks know. Any other comments?
I'm torn because this is one of the few areas where we actually have the power to increase our revenues to match our rising costs. On the other hand, yes, I certainly take on board what Regina is saying about this possibly compromising the future of the whole program. So,
if I could just make a comment, it just seems to me that a good principle here is that we cover our costs also. And if by covering our costs it leads to a decline in enrollment, then we can make further changes then. But to anticipate, I guess I don't see enough evidence to propose not covering the costs.
David?
So along similar lines to what Stephen said, even though we have fewer applicants, even though we have a fewer number of families on the waiting list, there's still a waiting list. So we could still, at least currently, have a complete program along the lines of what it is that we would like for the size of it. Just because the waiting list is shorter doesn't mean that we have lesser of a program.
I think we have to be careful with the waiting list, because sometimes people will put themselves on the waiting list just for a particular school. So it's not as easy as what you're saying. It's not like you can switch people around and they'll say yes. They will find other opportunities.
Jennifer?
This is a question, actually, I'm hoping someone can answer for me. I think I heard correctly. The new facility is looking to fill 6 classrooms. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
6 or 7?
6 classrooms at $1,000 to $1,500 less. As a parent, what would you do?
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on the quality and reputation of the alternatives. Like for me, I welcome the I don't see it as competition, but more slots available for families in Brookline. And if it turns out that that price point and that quality meets needs of families in Brookline, then I think we need to be adjusting anyway. So I guess it's to look at it as competition seems to me not quite right in this case. With all respect to you, Regina, I say this as someone who thinks of BEEP as kind of a gold standard.
And it is.
I do too. So I appreciate that. I guess one of the other challenges is, the availability of extended day and how much extended day we'll have available versus how much extended day they'll have available. So, it's a really complicated issue for sure.
I am sensitive to saying that, adding extra expenses, a higher cost on the backs of families who have young children, it isn't quite the right way to put that, I don't think. I think we want to try and help our young families as much as we can. So
many of whom are barely able to stay here and afford to.
I know that. I know.
Yeah.
And yet they may not qualify for a scholarship. I mean, they're in between those income levels, Okay, Jennifer.
I'm sorry, just in hearing the conversation, I was really excited about BEEP when I moved here. I was really excited, wanted to participate, could not afford to participate. I also could not function within the hours that were available to the point of after school care. I could not take advantage of BEEP for a number of reasons, and I wanted to. I was so excited, but couldn't. And so I think of other families who have income that is below, I don't qualify, but I still can't afford to do it. So I just want to constantly push that conversation, from what I consider us to be a working class family in Brookline. There's a number of us who struggle to be here. And I will speak for myself and make that sacrifice knowingly because of the education that my children receive here. So I just want to keep pushing that conversation. There are people who make significantly less than I do.
Susan?
I wasn't going to say this because I said it yesterday, but I'm mindful there's sort of a different set of people here. I think one of the things that's challenging is that there are a number of different moving parts to this conversation, and we're trying to talk about all of them at the same time. One of them is understanding our cost model relative to other programs, both private programs or nonprofit programs, and understanding what makes our cost model more expensive and needing kind of this price point that we're talking about to cover our increases. And I think that it's important for us. I mean, we have a unionized workforce, and most of those other places don't. We have kind of a set of costs and just realities that we value and prioritize. And so I think the first thing that's really important is for us to grapple with that and sort of make sure that we understand it and that we're able and willing to kind of make that case and support it, which I think we will be. I think that deep understanding I don't think we are having that conversation right now. I think the second thing that's really important is to think about the number of kids out there, the market out there, and how many kids we will have in any given year for those slots, which I would assume is 2 grade levels, roughly 1,000 kids, more or less. Potentially a little bit more if people who work in Brookline bring their kids here, although I don't assume that's going to be a large number. So even just thinking about like, what is our available market of students? And then what are some of the other options, as we've said, where might they go? And sort of how does that when you kind of put together both the sort of external reality of what the choices are for families, and you put that together with our cost model and what we, just can and can't cut from it, we might be, and then sort of, and just make some decisions about who it is that we think that we want to serve and we need to serve from a mission perspective, and what the financial implications are of that. So it's not an undoable amount of analysis. Regina's led it in the past, but I do think that without that, it's going to be hard for us to kind of settle on what feels like the right number and settle on an operating model and a marketing strategy and a revenue pricing model, and that both is mindful of the operating costs and realities, but also quite sensitive to the kinds of students that we want to serve, and how we want to blend special students who have special needs that we're mandated to serve with students who are lower income, who we want to serve, or middle income, and what that means. Because I think the reality is that if this runs a deficit, then that gets picked up by the public schools, right? That gets picked up by taxpayers. And we may want to do that. We do it all the time. That's our job, is to allocate taxpayer money. But I just think that it's hard to make that decision without some of those other pieces of information. Just exactly to Jennifer's point, like if we want to be subsidizing certain families with taxpayer dollars by essentially running the program at an intentional deficit strategically, then we just have to be sort of maybe a little bit clearer about that. So at any rate, I just wanted to put that out there from a historical perspective, because I think going forward, I don't think we're going to have that analysis, tonight, but I think that going forward, to the extent that we have it, it might make conversations like this a little bit more linear, or at least we'd be all having the same conversation about the same set of trade-offs. So that would just be my recommendation for future years.
So we have a motion on the floor. It was seconded. Are we ready to vote? So the motion is for 4% increase with the BEAT program. Okay, let's take a vote. Helen?
No.
Susan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
No.
Jennifer?
No.
David?
Yes.
I vote no as well. 1, 2, 3, 4 no's, and 1, 2, 3 yes. So it did not pass.
I'd like to make a motion that we increase it by 3%.
I'll second that. Any other conversation about that? Okay, we'll vote. Helen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we're going with the 3%. It's our recommendation.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Regina, for all the work that you do for the program. Thank you. We are up to new business. Is there any new business? Okay, and we're going to go into an executive session.
Wait a minute. Are we doing reports or anything?
No, we're not.
Then I have one piece of new business.
Okay, go ahead.
Sort of two-part. One, just that everybody should know that we got MSBA approval for the Pierce School. I'm not sure if everybody heard it, but at least that. And on Monday, there's a PTO sponsored community meeting to go over the plans, the schedule, some of the thoughts about where not the thoughts, but answering questions from parents and things like that. So everybody's invited. It's on Zoom. I'm hoping that you got the invitation, but if not, I
think that I did anyway, so I'm assuming everybody did.
Okay, well, I'll make sure it gets sent out again.
Okay, thanks, Helen.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to have a motion to meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Brookline Educators Union, BEU, Unit A, and B, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the BEU, Unit A grievances, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. Purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from the following meeting, February 3rd, 2022. Do I have a second to that motion? Thank you, Stephen. And we'll vote. Helen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we will not be coming back to open session. We will go to executive session. Just a reminder that we have workshop next week. It's from 6 to 9 on Thursday. Okay, I will see most of you in executive session in just a few minutes.